Okay. Right, Councillor Pearson, I think we're all done now. Thank you.
Okay. Can start with apologies for absence.
Yes, Town Mayor, I've received one apology for absence. That's from Councillor Josh Green. He has a work commitment this evening. Do Council wish to approve that apology?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I propose that it's approved.
So I just have Councillor Thornton joining us as well now. Bear with me. And another member of the public. Okay. So that's just the one apology for absence. Any other absences will be recorded as unapproved in line with established practice. Yeah.
Item.
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Pearson.
Item 2 is to record declarations of interest from members for any items on the agenda. No, it doesn't look like it.
None declared.
No, none.
Okay, the next item is three. We have Alan Rome from Sunderland City Council with us this evening. Alan, I don't know where you are on my screen.
Thanks, Graham. Can you hear me? I'm just trying to work out if this is working.
Yes,
fine.
All right, cool. Sorry, having to install new software on a council laptop's never a good idea. Okay, thank you for having me here. I'm really here in response to a letter that came in from the town council recently. I think it was just before the November cabinet, regarding an item that was due to be considered at that cabinet meeting, regarding specifically the Hetton Nursery and the sustainability of Hetton Nursery and the wider impact that that would have on nursery provision both in the ward and the wider Coalfield area. The letter that came in indicated that you'd like the council to come and talk through the proposals, which we're obviously very happy to do. I would like to say you would have been a statutory consultee to any consultation that would have went out, so we would have been engaged with you at that point anyway. But essentially, Hetton Nursery, it's one of 2 maintained nursery schools in Hetton. It's one of 3 in the Coalfield and I think 8 across the city. So Sunderland does have a lot of maintained nurseries, especially in comparison to other local authority areas. But Hetton Nursery is one of 2 nurseries, the other being Millfield, which is unfortunately closed a few years ago. It's one of 2 nurseries that we've been concerned about the increasing levels of debt that's being accrued at the nursery over a period of time. I mean, at the close of the last financial year, the nursery was about £140,000 in debt. We think that by the end of this year, there are obviously factors, but by the end of this year, that'll have risen to about £167,000 worth of debt. And by 2022-23, that could have then surpassed the £200,000 mark. At that sort of ratio, if the level of debt accruals continued, then realistically by 2025 the nursery could hold £250,000 worth of debt, and this is something that we're obviously concerned about from a sustainability standpoint, because while there's absolutely no case that we don't value the level of provision. In fact, Hetton Nursery's 3- and 4-year-old provision Ofsted value is good. The value of the childcare is outstanding. So we recognise that it is a quality provision, but that has to be aligned with the ability to be able to maintain itself. And our concern is that that nursery accruing that level of deficit with no realistic way of being able to resolve that position isn't a sustainable setting. The nursery does actually receive a subsidy as part of a wider subsidy which is allocated to local authority nurseries, which is why the position isn't worse. But as it stands,
is it going to close? I had a feeling it might. I saw some.
hi, sorry.
Yeah, we continue, Mr. Owen.
Okay.
Matt, that you're going to have a
Sorry.
meeting?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Councillor Thornton's got a microphone on. We can
I was
hear
going
them.
to say, Councillor Thornton, you're
Right.
talking. Councillor Thornton, can you put your mute on, please? Okay, sorry, Mr. Owen, if you can go ahead.
No, sorry, no problem. So again, we recognise that there is a quality of provision, but we also recognise that there needs to be a sustainability of the setting. And with that level of deficit, we don't feel that the setting is sustainable as it currently stands. There are issues, whereas it's implicitly now impacting on the sustainability of other settings as well because of the way that the city's lump sums allocated. But even if that wasn't the case, the setting itself is so far in debt, it will never be able to right itself, and it's projected to continue to accrue debt. So what we looked at from a standpoint of sustainability is we need to really be able to, we need to continue to deliver early years places in the Hetton ward. So we'd already started working through a proposal to rebuild Hetton Primary School, and that school was going to contain a small early years provision for the parents who want to, they want to be able to drop the nursery kids off and the school kids off in the same place. If you look at the Hetton site, then you could drop your nursery kids, your primary school kids, and your secondary school kids off at the same place. So we know that there's a level of support for that type of provision. We'd started looking at that. But what we're keen to do is we're keen to maintain the number of places that we have in the Hetton ward, so we can obviously continue to deliver the number of nursery places that we have, but do it in a manner which is sustainable, which is cost effective, which means that the provision, it's not just a case of here and now in the short term, but it'll be there forever. It'll be there for the next 20, 30 years without any question of whether or not that could be challenged. So what we looked at doing is we thought, well, if you're going to have an early years provision there, if we're going to have to remove places because something can't realistically stay open, we could replicate those places in the new setting. We know that there are also alternative places. So there's surplus places at Hetton Lions Nursery at the minute. There's surplus places at Hetton House Nursery at the minute. There's surplus places at Eppleton and Neasman Lane. So we knew that by creating places at Hetton Primary as well, we weren't just going to be saying to people, you have to go to Hetton Primary, but they would be able to have a choice of a number of different nurseries, and that would include Hetton Primary School. So that was the council's provision as it stood, and that is a basic run through of the proposal as it stands. Obviously, the new school at Hetton Primary School is to be completed in 2022, but we would be able to accommodate the children at Hetton Nursery, from Hetton Nursery at Hetton Primary School a year earlier and transition them into the new build. Now, I have to stress that no decision's been made on Hetton Lahole Nursery at this point. There's a full process that needs to be followed when you discontinue any provision. The first part of that is a pre-publication consultation. So the first thing that the local authority would have to do in a proposal of this nature is to consult. We'd have to go out to the community. We would go out to the community and we would say, these are the issues that this nursery faces, and this is what we're looking at with it. What are your views? That's a 6-week process. After that, there's then a statutory representation period. So it's only after that 6 weeks that a proposal actually becomes formalised. So what the council then needs to do is, over a 4-week period, it would take the outcomes from the consultation, that would inform a proposal. It would publish that proposal, and members of the public, members of the community, or interested parties would have the ability to make a statutory representation. So they can say, you've put this proposal out there, and these are what our views are on it. After that, then a decision would be made. So you've essentially got 10 weeks worth of consultation. You've got 6 weeks before full proposals made, and then 10 weeks worth of consultation before a decision is actually made on that proposal. So it's not something that we're saying, this decision has been taken and this is what's going to happen now. There is actually a clear process to follow, and there is a lot of consultation with the local community, with members, with families who attend the school, with families who attend the nursery, with other nurseries in the area and across the city that would inform that process. At the minute, we're currently looking at commencing that consultation process early in the new year. It's likely to be very early in January. because what we want to do is we would like to be in a position where the people of Hetton have a decision either way by the middle of the year. So we don't want people to say, where should I be taking my child to nursery next year? We want them to have that information. And it may be that the decision's made to retain Hetton, the whole nursery school. It may be that the decision is made to discontinue it, in which case we'd be saying to parents, you can either transition this alternative provision at the primary school, or we'll help you secure a place at one of the other settings. I should also point out that any vacancies in the nursery that are created at the primary school would be filled through staff who are currently employed at the nursery school as well. We would be looking to redeploy, the staff so we've managed to retain that level of expertise and experience that's there. We think they would add value to any setting, especially a new nursery in a school. So that is a very quick run through of the proposal, how we've ended up with this proposal. And I'm happy to take any queries or comments on that you might have, and that might flush out a little bit more of the detail.
Geddes? You're on mute, Councillor Geddes.
Good evening, Alan. How are you? It's Councillor Geddes. You're on mute, Alan.
Sorry, good evening, Councillor.
Good evening. You mentioned that there are 8, I think you said there was 8 other nurseries. Could you tell me and the rest of the people on the meeting tonight, are all of them, are any of them in the same level of discrepancy, or are they all flush with money, for the want of a better word? Because surely we can't have just one nursery that's floundering with this level of expenditure, as you put it.
Well, I'll preface this by saying that, and this is something that I should have probably mentioned in my earlier presentation. I apologise for not doing that. I think that Hetton the whole nursery has done absolutely everything they can at this point in time to try and resolve their position. They've made changes to the way they procure goods and services. They've restructured. They have endeavoured to actually make changes in order to almost not on the floor. But there's definitely something with regards to the way that nursery schools are funded, which is making it very challenging for the sector in general at the minute. Sunderland actually, the funding that Sunderland receives for early years places, I think in the northeast there's only Newcastle that receive more than us. But at the end of the day, if you look at something like the lump sum as a prime example, the lump sum is calculated based on the first 15 hours that a child will have, and that comes up with an average payment. But a lot of parents send their children to school for 30 hours, so that isn't taken into consideration, and that has caused the sector in general to become destabilised. But no nursery school in the sector currently has the level of deficit, or anywhere near the level of deficit that Hetton the whole currently has. And the only one that was close was Millfield Nursery, which was closed 2 years ago. And their deficit at the point that they would close wasn't as much as Hetton the Halls is, and wasn't projected to be as much as Hetton the Halls is.
Would it be possible from a Hetton Town Council point of view, could we have the details of the expenditure of the nurseries within the city, so we can have a comparison? Because, you know, it would be very helpful to the councillors and the parents who send their children to the nursery. Just another point, and I know this is not particularly aimed at you, but I want to make a point. Gen 2 built 133 houses at the bottom of the 3 tons bank. There was 106 money, and part of that 106 money was supposed to go to education. You know, that was £80,000. Sunderland City Council allowed Gen 2 to completely renege on that. That £80,000, a part of it, would have helped. So what I'm trying to say here is the City Council can bend the rules when it suits them, and what price do you put on young children's education? I would like to see all of the rest of the nurseries in detail to see the level of expenditure, and let's have a comparison here, because I'm a Hetton lad, born and bred, And that nursery has been a diamond, and I really don't want to see that nursery closing.
Okay,
I for one, will be fighting for it.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor, I'll take you. I'll take the points one at a time. I'm not in a position to share the financial detail with regards to other nurseries, and I don't think it would be appropriate for me to do this in this setting. It might be something that the town council can pick up outside of this session. Regarding Section 106, I understand the frustration, but Section 106 regulations are very, very clearly stated. And while Section 106 money can be negotiated for education purposes, that education purposes only extends towards the creation of new places from a capital standpoint. It can't be spent on revenue. So we can't negotiate £160,000 worth of Section 106 with a developer and then use that to pay off the nursery's deficit, almost put a slush fund together for future deficit. It has to be used to basically build stuff. You have to be physically adding places using that funding.
Okay.
So unfortunately, government regulations around SIL in Section 106 actually prevent us from being able to use that.
Well,
money
is it not a
for
point,
anything other
Alan,
than
that
bricks and mortar?
106 money, is it not a point that the 106 money could have been done with a round robin where it went to Hetton, and that would have allowed money from the city councillor to actually go back in? I mean, at the end of the day, I find it very frustrating that Sunderland City Council can spend millions and millions on vanity projects and just, you know, look to close one of the best nurseries in the area. So I've had me say, sorry.
Right, it's Councillor Defty and then Councillor Defty, then Councillor Elvin as well after Mr. Rome. Do you want to answer that question, Mr. Rome, or you're okay? No, you're okay with that? Yep.
Well, again, I can only speak to the capital side of it. Capital is very, very strongly regulated. I work in capital, not revenue, but capital is very strongly regulated. Stuff like basic need money, which the government gives us to support areas, has to be spent on bricks and mortar. Condition funding we get has to be spent on bricks and mortar. There's the early years funding that the council gets, of which I believe about 98% of it's automatically passported over to early years setting, and any remaining amount is used to support things like special and educational needs provision and support for those settings. So from the areas, things like Section 106, from basic need, from money which is used to, for example, build a new Hetton primary school, it's been spent on that because it can't be spent on anything else. We can't reallocate it and spend it on revenue to support the nursery sector. Where our hands are very much tied. And Section 106 in particular, it's very, very stringently regulated. We need to put a return in every year which says, this is the agreement that we have, this is what it's been spent on, this is the area it's been spent on. And if we don't spend it on the appropriate thing, we have to give it back to the developer with interest. It has to, you know. So I appreciate the frustration, but it's not something which is in our gift to do.
Okay. Councillor Defty, and then there was Councillor Elvin.
Hi. I'm on the understanding that that nursery, when they took over, the current management team there, they took on the debt that was there already before they went, and they have since managed to reduce the debt somewhat from what was carrying on. And we were down there the other day installing a new washing machine, and I've noticed that maintenance on that building is nil. Council have decided they're not going to spend any money. The gutters are overflowing with weeds. The backyard is 2 foot deep in leaves. The trees, which we took, I don't know, been on this council before, it took nearly a year to get the trees sorted out. Gen 2, who cut the trees, and Sunderland City Council, I think, have been running this building down for some time. And it is an old building and it will need maintenance. But I'm sure, as Councillor Geddes has already said, the Section 106, every councillor that works for is in any department in Sunderland City Council, when Section 106 money gets diverted or said you don't need to pay it, even your department, every department, education, nursery, whatever it is, you should be jumping up and down, saying, why has this money not been, if it has to be directed at new build, why has it been let go? But it's like Councillor Geddes says, just gets pushed under the carpet and nobody says a thing. But I'm on the understanding that the new management have turned the nursery around somewhat.
Okay. I think Ruth and her team have done a commendable job there. I think they've done absolutely everything they can with the resources that they have. On average, over the last 3 years, though, the nursery has accrued an additional £24,000 worth of deficit every year. It's put on something like £96,000 worth of deficit since 2014-15. So the nursery continues to accrue deficit. Again, that's no disrespect to Ruth and her team, who I think have done an outstanding job, and they've worked within the limits and the constraints that they have. I don't think this is. I don't think that. In fact, nobody in this meeting would think that it's any reflection on the nursery management, but it has continued to accrue deficit. With regards to the condition of the building, we do have a rolling condition survey scheme, of which we're going to be looking at nurseries this year. There was a recent survey done, of which they identified that the majority of the nursery from a capital condition standpoint and a critical condition standpoint, the majority of the nursery was in good standing. There were a few areas where they felt that things need to be addressed over maybe a 5-year period, but they were focused largely on electrical and mechanical. We have an ever-reducing capital budget to support condition works in schools, though. So the situation is that every time a school becomes an academy, there's a calculation that's done on the number of children at that school. That money is then taken away from the council and it's put in a national pot, which all academies have to bid for. And that means that over the time that I've been in post, our capital maintenance condition budget that we get has gone from about £2.5 million to a little bit over £1 million. £1 million has to support every single maintained school in the city for roofs, boilers, windows, keeping them wind and watertight. So we do have a rolling capital programme, but it needs to be within the context and the constraints that we actually have. The council, in order to replace Hetton Primary School, which is one of the schools which is it's of an age, it's a system build clasp school, which was built with a lifespan of between 50 years and 60 years. It's now 53, 54 years old. The council largely borrowed with the money that we haven't been able to use from our basic need of Section 106 in order to replace that school with a new modern building. So I take the issue, but with regards to things like general maintenance, a lot of schools are having to use their DFC because council funding is largely focused on repairing and replacement roofs, repairing and replacement heating systems, which aren't going to see through winter.
Councillor Elvin, and then obviously I've got 4 members of the public wishing to speak as well. So if Councillor Elvin next, and then there's Emma, Hannah, and Penny and Leanne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Owen. My point is an issue of financial. How much is the new Hetton Primary School going to cost?
The new Hetton Primary School,
yeah,
roughly about £4.9 million.
4.9 million.
That's correct, yes.
Is that a PFI or is it being paid for by Sunderland?
It's a combination. It's a bit of a hodgepodge of various funding where we've raised what we can from various sources with the council supporting the rest through borrowing.
Is there a PFI element?
There isn't, no.
There isn't?
There's no PFI element.
Okay, that's good news. Obviously, you're a maintained school, and many of your nurseries obviously are private, and they have obviously different standards. Is that correct?
Yes, and again, I think this is largely one of the issues that the maintained the maintained nursery school sector has. So if you're a private nursery, to give you a bit of context, you don't have to have a head teacher, you don't have to have a qualified teacher.
I'm aware of all that, but that wasn't the answer to my question. My question was, this is a maintained school, maintained at the public by the public purse. Most of the other schools are private schools, and therefore they have a lower standard of education. Is that correct?
In Hetton?
Yeah.
No. In Hetton, you've got Easington Lane, which is a maintained nursery class. You've got Hetton Lyons Nursery, which is a maintained nursery school. You have Eppleton, which has a maintained nursery class within an academy. if the proposals are successful, you'll have Hetton Primary School, which is, so to my knowledge, the only, I think it's disproportionately in line with maintained state-funded education, with I think Hetton House being the primary PVI.
They're a maintained school, but they're not maintained as specifically maintained nursery schools, where they require these points you were making earlier about a headmistress, and the fact that this particular school was one that was set up to provide education of the service to children under fires in mainly underprivileged areas, and to cater for children with specific needs that couldn't be really fully catered for in all the other schools. Is that correct?
Well, in which case there would be 2 maintained nurseries, which would be Hetton Lions.
No, I'm asking about this school. Was it not set up specifically as a maintained nursery, and the maintained nursery has specific aims and objectives, and one of them is that they were set up initially in deprived areas across the country, and they are there to cater for a specific type of education, a specific type of child, in addition to normal children.
I wouldn't say that. I would say that all school settings and all maintained nursery settings should be inclusive and cater for all nature and children of all nature. Okay,
so you disagree with the maintained nursery schools state of play report then, which specifically states that. So Sunderland Council disagrees with this report of March 2015.
No, Councillor, I don't disagree with any report. I disagree with I disagree that only maintained nursery schools should be catering for all children of all areas and deprived areas.
Are you saying that they're not initially set up, according to this report, specifically with those purposes in mind that I had? They were in deprived areas, and they were particularly to assist children who, had specific needs.
Well, again, I don't disagree with that, but are you saying that other settings shouldn't do that?
I didn't say that. You're putting words into my mouth. I'm asking you the question. You're supposed to answer me, not put words in my mouth. I'm just saying, is that not what that purpose of that school was? And that it's the only, and there is a severe lack of these types of schools throughout the country, and there has been recognition of that fact. And this report that was produced stated that the decline in these schools was quite appalling, and that unless it's under severe circumstances, the presumption should always be to keep them open and never to close them.
Well, yes, and that's backed up by the school organisation regulation, which continues that presumption as well.
Yeah, but you appear not to want to continue that presumption. You want to close it on financial grounds.
Again, at this point in time, no decision has been made with regards to whether or not Hetton, the whole nursery, is kept open or is closed. What we're proposing is that we carry out a consultation and a representation exercise in order to fully gauge that.
So you didn't say at a meeting, it's not about quality, it's about settings paying for themselves.
There needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance where settings are able to actually afford the provision that they can give. So, for example, every maintained nursery, so public finances can't afford for every maintained nursery school or every school in the city to become £250,000 in debt. I think that much has been very much demonstrated through public finance. And that school in Hetton, the whole nursery, is in an unfortunate position where it not only has a large deficit, that deficit's increasing rapidly, but there's no way that it actually, based on current projections, there's no way that could be remedied. So what we have to look at is, we have to look at, if a setting can't be maintained, can the level of places be maintained, sustained? So I would say you're probably accurate in this case. Yes, it is financial. This is a financially driven decision.
Okay. Also, I'd like to take issue with these figures. You're banding about these huge numbers. I'd like you to comment on the fact that it's my understanding that when the head teacher was appointed in 2015, she wasn't aware, and neither were the governors at that time, that there was a deficit, and that it was approximately 179,000. And by the end of that year, I'm advised that that deficit was reduced to £43,475, and that there was agreement in place to say that if the budget was brought into balance, that Sunderland Council would wipe off the remaining outstanding deficit. But conveniently, of course, the head of finance changed, and then he denied that this was ever agreed. So would you like to comment on the fact that, I don't know how long you've been with the council, as to whether there was an agreement that if the head reduced the deficit and also got to make it operate on an even keel, which she claims she has done, that you would write off that remaining deficit, which should reduce, according to her, from 179,000 to 43,000 a year by reorganising the school, which is one hell of a saving. I mean, it's nothing that you couldn't ask from the city council to do such a thing like that. They wouldn't know where to start. But that's by the by. Can you comment on the fact that there was an agreement that, providing, say, got the school to work on an even keel, you would write off the previous deficit?
I'm not aware of that agreement. The nursery did mention it in my discussions with them earlier this year, but I'm not aware of that agreement. And the people I've spoken to in the council's finance aren't aware of that agreement, although, as you've said, there has been a change. With regards to the nursery operating on an even keel, the nursery has accrued a further £94,000 worth of deficit in the period since 2015. So it's not operating on an even keel, it's accruing £24,000 a year's worth of deficit.
So that's every year, and even 24,000?
No, that's an average over the period 2015 to 2019-20.
Well, 2015, they'd already had a deficit of 179,000 when the headmistress took over.
Okay, well,
and according to the figures you used at the beginning of this discussion, the figure still sounds at around 180,000. So it hasn't moved since 2015 in reality.
I'm looking at data from 2015, and that's those are the outturns that I'm looking at now.
So in 2015 it was 179,000, and in 2021 it's still 179,000.
As a collated sum over a period of the last 5 years, the average accrued deficit is about £24,000. It's about £94,000 since that period. That's what I'm looking at. What it may have been before, I don't know, but it's put on. There's an additional £94,000 since that period.
Can we move on and let members of the public speak as well, please? I've got Emma waiting. Emma Ovington.
Hiya, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to give my say on this before I ask my question. I'm a teacher myself, so I understand the importance of education above and beyond. I also understand the need for stability in education with currently what's going on. Bear in mind we have remote learning and everything else going on. There's a couple of things in the proposals and what's been said tonight, just as far as I'm concerned, don't make any sense. First of all, there's an assumption being made in the proposal, the way you read it, the parents are going to send their children, when this nursery closes or not closes, to this new build at Hetton. Let's look at the sustainability of the new setting. If that doesn't happen and parents don't send their children there, you're going to have a nursery where it has limited people going there. So what was the point of even building it in the first place? Aside from chucking capital at it, as you've already mentioned, because that's the only place you can put it in bricks and mortar, it's going to end up being a very empty building with very few. The other reason for that as well is, of course, it doesn't provide wraparound care. Now, like I said, I'm a teacher. I put my son in Hetton Hall Nursery School at 11 months old, and they've provided an amazing resource and setting for him, and he's now 3. Now, as far as I'm concerned, your new nursery would mean, as a mother, I couldn't have gone back to work because it's only 2 to 4. It's not making sure it's providing for those children who are younger. So we're not getting the same deal at all. Now, I'm not against the new build at Hetton Primary because at the end of the day, it improves the area and absolutely needed. But one thing I'm concerned about is how as you said, Alan, having a place where they can start in nursery, move through to primary, move through to secondary at the same setting. But Hetton primary setting, as a parent, what deal am I getting when they're getting under expected progress? Their progress currently in this last academic year was well below national average. So why would I want my son to begin in that nursery, move through that primary, go to Hetton school, which, by the way, I used to go to Hetton. There's nothing wrong with it, but right now the progress isn't making sense for me to send my son there. So what I will be looking at is the sustainability of the new setting, because actually I can't see it being sustainable. As for the actual proposal, putting it out to the public, I do wish you well, considering the lack of communication with the councillors is appalling. Not Hetton Town councillors, they've been magnificent, but Sunderland City councillors, appalling. I sent a letter to Councillor Miller. I'm yet to even get an acknowledgement of that letter, and it was sent via email. So as far as I'm concerned, there was no reason, not even just to say I've acknowledged it. And I know I put a petition online about the closure of the nursery, and 1,350 currently have signed it. So I think it speaks volumes about how the public currently feel about your proposal. I hope I relayed all of that to you very well. So the only question I do have to put here is, how are parents getting a better offer?
Okay, right. So what we're not saying is, we're not saying that parents have to send their children to Hetton Primary School. And in fact, there's actually a range of settings in the area that do have places. We know that there's another maintained nursery school in Hetton, so another maintained nursery school with a head teacher, a PISA teacher, where they start the children at a lower age range, and we know that there are vacancies at that school. We know that there are vacancies at East Lane. We know that there are vacancies at Hetton House. So we're not saying that parents have to send their children to Hetton Primary School. However, we are currently in the middle of a consultation around that. And one of the things that is coming back through that consultation is that there are a cohort of parents in the Hetton area who would value the opportunity, because they might already have children at Hetton Primary School, but they do value the opportunity to have that type of provision where they can where they can make one trip to a school, drop the kids off in the nursery, drop the kids off in the primary. That's coming back. That's actually coming through on the consultation. We're getting positive responses from that. So there are groups of parents in Hetton who would value that, but we're not saying that. We're not saying that we're going to close Hetton. Well, we're not saying we're going to close Hetton Hall Nursery. It's just a proposal at this point. But we're not saying if this happens, you have to go to Hetton Primary School. Parents have choice. There are other nursery settings. What we are saying is there's a provision there, and what we would like to do is we'd like to staff that provision using the excellent staff who are currently at Hetton Hall Nursery School. So that level of expertise would actually transfer to the new building. I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm absolutely convinced that facilities, resources, building quality, all that drives standards up. I think that...
I don't believe it does. I'm sorry, I'm a teacher. I don't believe it does. I still work in an old build, and that old build's as good as it ever was. I don't believe in new builds transforming education. I'm sorry to cut you off there. But one thing I do have to say in the proposal, not necessarily that you were stating we had to send them elsewhere, but your proposal very clearly stated about how all of the parents sending their children to Hetton Hall Nursery travel, and it makes more sense for them to go to another one. I chose that nursery for a reason. And actually, albeit, yeah, I get what you're saying, let's move the staff, they won't be getting a worse deal. Do you know how difficult it is for a child to move setting, particularly during a pandemic? Because I work with children and I don't think my son will settle anywhere else. So I do appreciate what you're saying, but that's not the view I take.
So again, when we're talking about new builds driving standards, I think if you've got a building which has an SEN resource area for children with SEN needs where they can have a calming area or get additional support, you've got practical learning areas where they don't currently exist, so you can acquire practical skills. You've got better outdoor areas, you've got large class spaces, you've got better ICT infrastructure, stuff like that. That drives standards. I mean, it's that is the case. A smaller build with less classrooms, with less resources, with less facilities, that doesn't drive up standards. I feel that a new build at Hetton Primary School will benefit the community immensely, especially the children and the families that attend that school, not least because it'll give them the proper space to operate one form of entry per year. And again, I understand that Hetton Hall Nursery is a popular nursery, and I understand, and the council understands why it's a popular nursery, and it's unfortunate that we're actually in this position. But the nursery as it stands from a financial standpoint, the nursery isn't a viable setting. So we need to make sure that there are enough places in the area, but those places are able to be there in 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years for the families and the parents that are coming through afterwards. And that's largely the crux of it, while also ensuring that the viability of other nursery settings is protected in the Hetton area as well, is protected as well. And again, you know, if there's no maintained nursery in the area which would, you know, stand a better chance of survival from all of this, then that needs to be considered as well.
Hannah wishing to speak as well now.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can, yes.
Hi, just to follow on from that point you've made there, Alan, can I just clarify, please? So do you actually think the building and the resources create the learning in a school? Because for me, it's about the senior leadership team and the teaching quality within the school as a result of the performance management and CPD provided. And actually, when you look at Hetton Nursery School, you can clearly see that because they've got an outstanding rating, their children make exceptional progress. You can see that the quality is already there. That building, that's not going to change that. And can I just clarify as well? Are you saying that you're going to take the senior leadership team over to the new build?
So we need to look at things like staff and structure. And again, it's not really appropriate for me to talk much about the staffing element of it, because we need to speak to the staff at the nursery about that. But yes, I do feel that if you have a school which has less resources, smaller teaching areas, poor ICT infrastructure, poorer external areas, less resource for things like SEN, and you have this, and you give them the opportunity to have all of that to add value to the curriculum, it will drive standards up, yes.
So yes, I completely agree. So if you funded Hetton Nursery sufficiently, imagine the outcomes you would get from an already outstanding provision.
And again, the funding that the council has available to fund nurseries, that's the fund that comes from the government to do so. When you look at capital and revenue, and to be honest, it confuses me the majority of the time as well. But when you look at capital and revenue, they are separate. So what I have as a capital budget is infinitely different to what operates as a revenue budget within the council, or the early years funding that the council is given to support those settings.
I understand what you're saying, but if that agreement that had been made many years ago to write off the deficit that was as it was in 2015 or whatever year it was, surely by now would be in a very different situation. And actually, the school would be in a much better position, and continuing what is an already outstanding provision, the provision will be even better because they'd be better resourced.
Again, I don't think so. I think that the way that early years is currently funded, I don't think the school could have done much differently. And I think that the financial.
Do you think it will be in the same position? It will be in the same position,
yeah.
All right, okay, so they would have lost 44,000, but they would still be in the same position. So they would have increased to £44,000 deficit further. Is that what you're saying?
If they had started at zero, they would have been at £94,000 deficit now. That's what we feel, because that's the way that the funding's calculated, and that's the way that the funding's allocated.
I've just got another query as well, Alan, just quickly. In the opening and closing maintained schools government guidance, in the early years section, it talks about the fact that we should adopt a presumption against closing nurseries, and correct, a place for closure should be strong. Within that, it explains that plans to develop alternative early years provision, clearly demonstrating that it will be at least equal in quantity and quality to the provision provided by the nursery, with no loss of expertise and specialism. So can you guarantee that that's going to be the case at Hetton? Because for me personally, I look at it and I think, well, Hetton Nursery currently is outstanding. Hetton Primary School is not. The outcomes in data are below national average and have been for a number of years at Hetton Primary School, and currently you're not going to provide anything for the babies. So how can you tell me that that quantity and quality is equal?
Well, the school organisation guidance focuses on statutory provision, but in which we feel that by harnessing the expertise that the nursery currently has with the staff who are currently delivering that, we would be able to provide something which is sorry, we feel the staff, by redeploying the staff, we'd be able to provide a provision that the parents would be happy with, With
But
regards
as
to the
I've
baby
just said,
provision,
if you're not taking over the senior leadership team, I cannot see that that's going to happen, because it's the senior leaders in the school who ultimately drive teaching and learning. And as you've said yourself, you can't answer that at the moment. So
it would be inappropriate of me to talk about staff in this setting.
absolutely,
Yes.
but I'm just very concerned that you're telling me it's going to be the same, when actually without those senior leaders and the whole school team, that will not be a replica of what we've currently got in the area.
Again, I don't want to talk about specific staff and staffing issues in this. It's not really appropriate because we haven't had that discussion with the staff yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we bring Penny? Wishes to speak, I believe.
Yes, thank you. Hi, my child actually attends the nursery, and I'm actually an early years lead in another school. We do have childcare on my school site, and I chose to send my daughter to this school because I wanted wraparound care. I wanted her to stay in the same provision, high quality provision and outstanding provision all the way through her early years, because they are precious and they are different to any other year groups in school. I work in a large primary, and my early years setting is completely different to the rest of the school. And a primary school who have not had a nursery attached are unable, in my opinion, in my expert opinion, because I have worked in early years since qualifying and I am now very old. And I think that, in my opinion, you need to reconsider this for a number of reasons. The first being, COVID has happened. Emotional well-being of our children. It is actually part of the early years curriculum. It is not stated in any other year group. Frankly, it is a prime area, and you are not looking after our youngest children, who are most vulnerable, who need solid relationships, who need routine. All of these things are very clear as an early years practitioner, one of which you are not, unfortunately, Alan. As well as that, you've mentioned a number of alternative provisions. The first one I'd like to mention is when you said Millfield had been closed down. They were closed down as a good provision, not an outstanding provision. Hetton Lyons Nursery School is a good provision. Hetonley Hall Nursery School, where I chose to send my daughter and I drive to, it's not on the way to my work, I go in the opposite direction, is an outstanding provision. I think in terms of your finances and your figures, they need to be explicit and they need to be shared with the public, as well as our councillors in Hetton. You are seeing on average a £24,000 each year. I'd like to know how much of that was in COVID, when the nursery protected our children so well.
Okay, well, that's £24,000 on average a year going back to 2015. So 15,
how much
16,
of that
16,
was this
17,
year?
17.
How much of that was this
I
year?
haven't actually included this year in that because of COVID, because it would have increased the average further.
Also, are you aware that the government have announced that they're looking at funding for 3 to 4 year olds as part of COVID catch-up? They've just announced that this week. Were you aware of that?
So
because that would obviously benefit the nursery
and
could
again,
help
that
with deficit. Primary
again,
schools have obviously received £80 per pupil. Our private nurseries, where our children are still educated and children were entitled to education when they're 3, they're entitled to that 15 hours, got nothing. But they're looking at that again. That would help towards deficit.
Okay.
But again, that's something that hasn't been considered. I think if it's a proposal that's going to the public, we should be fully informed of finances, because I think from conversations we're having this evening, it seems like the figures are just made up on the spot. And if you've got an average there, you must surely have a yearly breakdown of those figures. You must know how much has been reduced and where those costs are coming from. Since the introduction of the 30 hours funding, I'm sure you'll agree that working parents like myself who take full advantage of that 30 hours funding are now going to be bringing in more money to the nursery.
Right.
But our
Again,
children are currently in the childcare part, which Hetton Primary will not be able to provide for. So both quantity and quality are not going to be addressed at that alternative provision. Also, private settings don't have a head teacher and they don't have the same level of expertise. In addition to that, you did mention about better ICT in outdoor areas. It's actually stated very clearly for early years children, the more exposure they have to early technologies actually can have more of a damaging effect on their emotional skills, their personal skills, and all of their prime areas, including their speaking. And I'm just wondering, I agree with the other people who have spoken, that actually it's about the quality of the teaching staff and about the whole team, not just picks and pockets here and there. And I find it really inappropriate to take a public consultation when you haven't actually thought that through fully, which staff will be going over. And if it's not the entire team, which it won't be because they're only providing for 3 and 4 year olds, then you won't have that cohesive team. You'll also be run by a different head teacher who at the moment has got figures, unfortunately, in data that doesn't suggest that our children will move to an outstanding or even a good school. They're well below national. And
Okay,
that's not
so-
just in early years, that's in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2.
Right. I mean,
Speak.
I suppose what I would say is that this is good. This is all going to be subject to consultation. This is all going to be subject to representation. These points can be made there. There are a couple of things that I think are worth noting. When I was talking about things like ICT, outdoors, SEN resource, I'm not talking specific. That was a question that was put to me specifically around Hetton Primary School's new build. So I'm talking about the impact on children, for example, in year 5, in year 6, in year 3. I'm not talking about the early years. So, you know, I take the point that you make around, you know, access to early stage ICT, but what I'm talking about is I'm talking about the resource that new build is going to provide to all children who attend that school up to the point where they actually leave that school. With regards to the wraparounds being mentioned a couple of times here, again, we've had a very, very initial discussion with Hetton Primary School on this, but it's their intention to actually try and offer some sort of wraparound. It is their intention to offer some sort of wraparound. It is their intention to look at things like holiday provision. It is their intention to look at early starts, late finishes, and they would be looking at 2-year-olds as well. But again, it's a proposal. It's not something. This is the proposal. It's not a decision which has been taken, and people will have the opportunity to comment on that.
But it won't be taking babies, will it?
It won't be taking babies, no. But there are
Yeah.
provisions in the area that will be taking babies.
But they're not the same quality. That's why people chose to send their children to that setting. The quality is not there. I looked at alternative provisions. In fact, I looked at all the ones in Hetton and all the ones in Horton. They are not of the same quality. And that is because of the staff.
Sorry, Ped, but can we speak to Leanne now, or please? Because time, I'm just aware of time going on. So,
hello.
Speak to Leanne. Sorry, I don't wish to.
Hi. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think a lot of points that I was going to raise have been mentioned, but I have got a few things to say. So I'm a parent. My daughter goes to the nursery currently, and my son went prior. And I spoke at length last meeting about the value to our family from a special needs perspective, because my little boy has autism, and he was diagnosed whilst at nursery, and they got everything in place with an educational health care plan and so on, because they had the expertise to do so. So he went off to school in the best possible position that he could. So really, with my little girl, I could have sent her to the Hetton Lions nursery and done 2 drop-offs there, but I wanted my little girl to have the same experience and go to the outstanding nursery that my son went to. So I make two drop-offs. I drive down to Hettonley Hall Nursery School and take my little girl there. So there's the first thing that I want to mention is the distance. So, and I think this touches on what one of the other parents, Emma, said as well. So I think it is unlikely that a lot of the parents would say, yes, I will go up to Hetton Primary School instead to go to their nursery, because if you look at the distance between Hettonley Hall Nursery School and the Hetton Primary, it's significant for little legs to walk. So I mean, it's only going to be appropriate for somebody with a car, really. Although you can walk it. I think if you look for another provision, if you had to, let's hope we don't, I think that parents would say, right, well, another one in the centre of Hetton, because of course it is in the centre of Hetton, and they'll be looking towards the private nursery, which is very close. And then obviously they don't have to have a SEN, a SENCO, they don't have to have a head teacher, and they're not subjected to the Ofsted inspections that the nurseries are, which is, of course, I think is the same criteria as what primary schools are, which is obviously very high. I'm pleased that we're talking about sustainability, because obviously all I can hear from the proposal is not the wider term sustainability, it's more cost effectiveness, and I know that was mentioned. So I wanted to talk about the wider term of sustainability. Of course, the definition of that is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future children, shall we say. So children and families. And I think that sums it up. What I think, it does compromise, that this proposal does, a proposal to close, if the nursery close, that does compromise this obviously excellent provision that is rated outstanding, because it would take it away. So what I wanted to say, does Ofsted rating not count for anything? Because it's obviously the only outstanding nursery in Hetton Hall, and for all the hard work to actually attain and then maintain the outstanding Ofsted rating, all the nursery has been rewarded with, afforded with, shall I say, is this proposal, which is it's insulting to their hard work. So I picked up on the fact that Councillor Owen mentioned that the deficit would sorry, I've missed a point, sorry about that. So the words, I think it was, no realistic way of getting out of the debt. So I wanted to ask what these unrealistic ways would be, because it seems like the council has access to an extra large multi-million-pound pot to spend making a new nursery, which other parents have mentioned only gives half the provision, with obviously not the expertise that we have at Hetton Hall Nursery that we already have, and we already have a building in place. We already have everything set up the best that it could possibly be, because it is rated outstanding, and that's the top level. So we could look at the other side of sustainability as well, and that's an environmental impact. We already have the building, but we're gonna make a new building, have an extension of Hetton Hall, Hetton Primary School, and that's going to use new resources. What's the life cycle analysis of that? All these new resources, and yeah, we already have that in place. Sorry, one last point I had. Yeah, I also picked up on the point of Councillor Rowan noted that the deficit, I think you said the deficit yeah, okay, so the impact, it was about the impact on other nurseries.
Yes.
So they said something like, in the future, it could start impacting on other nurseries, and I think that's an unfair point to make, because they're all entitled to funding in their own right, and that tells me, that's sort of suggestive that, right, let's get rid of this one so we can put more money into the other ones, and that would of course be unfair. And I'm very the same as all the parents at Hetton Hall Nursery School. We need to sort of save this nursery school, and what the proposal to close will be from September. My child will have had her education at nursery by then and be off to primary school, so my children will have received all the excellent education then. And what I'm fighting for it for is because I feel like it's my obligation. I feel like it's that I need to speak up and say how great that they are, so that other children and other families can have the experience that I've had with my family going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for making your points. You know, firstly, I would say that I don't want this to come across as a decision that the council has taken lightly. It's not something that we've actually come to over a very short period of time. We've been observing the situation at Hetton Hall for a while now. The nursery's given us when the nurseries work their projections out at other points in time, it's looked at the start of the year like they would actually be able to generate more income, they would have more kids, or they would have more private income. It's looked to the nursery and the council's finance, when they've actually worked those projections out, that the financial position would be better, but then it just hasn't happened over the course of the year. And again, that's put this in the position now. So this isn't something we've looked at and we've just jumped on now. It's something that we have been trying to give the nursery time to actually resolve it over a number of years. We could have looked at Hetton Hall at the same time as we looked at Millfield, but we didn't, because at the time they were projecting in-year or close to in-year surplus budgets, which would have resolved the situation a little bit. I take your point about, you know, parents are choosing to go to the nursery because it is an outstanding nursery. Again, I think the council considers the nursery to have done an outstanding job with everything that's but with regards to the impact on other areas, that specifically, it's something that I was going to talk about, but decided not to. But it's something. So nurseries in Sunderland are nurseries everywhere are provided a subsidy. So the government calculate the subsidy. They look at the number of kids who are enrolled at a nursery, and they say, right, okay, you get your normal funding, but you get this little bit extra as well, because you've got X amount of kids who are accessing 15 hours, and that equates to this much money, and that goes in as well. Sunderland nursery heads want to support each other. So what they said is that, you know, this was 10 years ago, this conversation happened. But what the Sunderland nursery heads 10 years ago and the council decided was this extra money, rather than saying, well, that nursery produces £35,000 and that nursery produces £150,000. So you get your 150 and you get your 35. They said, let's put it all together and let's split across all the nurseries, because we've all got head teachers costs to make and they're all roughly the same. We've all got teaching costs to make and they're all roughly the same. But what started to happen is that there's been a couple of years now where Hetton, the whole nursery, has the lowest number of children out of the nurseries in the city, really. And the other one with the low number was Millfield. But Hetton, the whole, has the lowest number. So they generate the lowest amount of income. And what's happened is that the amount of funding that Hetton, the whole, receives is now between £35,000 and £40,000 more than they actually generate. Now that comes away from other nursery schools who generate more. And there's been 3 occasions over the last 3 years where that decision that nursery heads made, justifiably with all the right intentions, has caused nurseries to run in-year deficits, other nurseries to run in-year deficits, which has created financial vulnerability there. I mean, you know, so the other nursery in Hetton, for example, and another nursery somewhere else in the city. So there've been 3 occasions when that's actually happened. And the concern is that, so this doesn't just impact on Hetton, the whole nursery, it impacts on other nurseries in the city. What we're waiting for is we're waiting for the government to come and tell us whether or not they're going to maintain that mechanism, and they're indicating they're not, but they're telling us that whether they're going to maintain that mechanism moving forward. We've actually received our allocation for next year, and if they have made any changes to the way that they allocate it, it's not reflected in the allocation at all, in any way, shape or form, unless they count making things worse, improving the situation. But we're waiting to see whether or not that's actually confirmed. But that's where that comes from. So it's more the subsidy that nurseries get, the amount that's required at Hetton Hall now. It has impacted in previous years, but that might change. And again, it'll be something that we'll have that information early in 2021. So if that makes a drastic change, which it would have to double the amount of money which comes in the city. But if it makes a drastic change, it's something that would be taken into account. And again, at this point, this is a very much an early outline proposal. It's something that we're consulting on from early January for 6 weeks. Following that, there's another 4 weeks of representation. So these are things that will be taken into consideration as part of that point. So I fully accept everything that you say, though.
Yeah, okay.
I've got James, and then I've got Councillor Turner and Councillor Hopper wishing to speak, and then Councillor Rome. But then we'll have to curtail it because I'm aware of time-wise, and I believe, you know, I'm keeping Mr. Rowan there. He's talking. He's sort of be losing his voice by the end of this session, I would think. Okay, so can we have James on next, please?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Pearson. I'm another parent of a child at the nursery. Obviously, we've got to wait for the consultation before, you know, we get any clearer answers as to whether there's going to be a closure or not. Just to put a question in regards to something that I've heard about the closure dates. If this was to go ahead, this proposal, and the nursery was to close, it's my understanding that it would be from September 2021, and the new provision at Hetton Nursery isn't going to be built until 2022. Is that a correct date?
So at the minute, these are outline proposals. So things like this are subject to change, but it's one of the things that we are looking at. We were looking at getting some demountable classrooms at Hetton Primary School for the older year groups, because that school's now, they've got a low reception group, but they're oversubscribed just about every year group. The classroom should hold 20 kids. They've got 25 and a couple of them 24. So as part of the build proposal, we were going to get some demountable classrooms to move the the older kids potentially into those, and that would have freed up a large area at the bottom of the school, which we could use as a nursery provision, which has its own outdoor facility and things like that. So one of the options that we have available to us is to implement this from September 2021, offer nursery places for those who want them at Hetton Primary School in 2021, and or parents have the opportunity to go to other schools as well, and then those children who do take that up would transition into the new build.
So just to come back on that point, so demountable classrooms, aka porta cabins, that was mentioned as originally being for the nursery children. So what you're now saying is people who have older children going to Hetton Nursery will be forced to have their children learning in porta cabins until they're finished with the new build. How is this helping any of Hetton children's education? And I'm not just talking about, you know, kids from the school that you're looking to close. I'm talking about the older years children from Hetton Primary. You want them to learn for the last year of their education, their primary education, in a porta cabin.
So I mean, a lot of schools use demountable classrooms. I think, I mean, James, you might be about the same age as me, but you know, when I was at school, the porta cabin was just, you know, like a big caravan on the side of it. And now they're not. If you look at places like the nursery class at Barnes Infant School, you know, you look at some classroom facilities that are put up, you look at modular build, it's different really. It's not the same sort of thing. I mean, if you look at, I mean, Hetton Lions Primary School is probably a prime example where they have 2 year groups who are currently being taught in the demountable classrooms that are actually on the site. So I don't necessarily think that it's not, you know, your typical old caravan-y type thing. I think demountable classrooms are actually, you know, they're completely different those days. With regards to Hetton Primary School not being oversubscribed, it offers 140 places. There's 156 kids on roll.
So again, just to comment on previous comments that you've made about we need to build this all expenses paid new school for better facilities, yet you've just said that the facilities don't make a difference to how the children are learning. So you've just kind of thrown your own argument into the water there. It's all about how the children are taught. It's all about the access to, you know, specialized care that they have. But you've then just flipped it on its head and said, actually, no, you can teach children in a nice porta cabin and they can have just as good an education as they can do in the current build or in a new build. So which one is it?
Well, I don't think I don't think I did flip it on its head. I mean, what we're talking about is we're talking about accommodating a couple of year groups in classrooms that are set classrooms with the same facility their classroom would have in that existing build. And then in 2022, when the new school opens, they would go into a school which has, again, it would have SEN breakout facilities for kids with SEN. It would have better storage. It would have better staff preparation areas. It would have, you know, a better hall. It would have better PE facilities. It would have a better ICT infrastructure. So I think
I've got somebody speaking in the background. Can you turn the mute on, please? Thank you. Sorry.
So I think, you know, the provision of 2 classrooms, which are to all intents and purposes well kitted out classrooms which are equivalent with the specification now, versus the complete transformation of the resources that school's going to have to provide education to the children there, they're a little bit different.
Answer your question, James. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all I want to say on the matter at the minute. Like I say, there's been quite a lot discussed. As I say, what it seems to boil down to is a financial decision. So there's not a great deal other point that I can put forward that hasn't already been mentioned.
Can we have the 3 councillors to finish this off? Councillor Turner, I believe you wanted words.
Oh, thanks, Madam Mayor. Mine isn't actually a question to Alan, it's a question to the Hetton Town Council. So if the other 2 councillors are questions for Alan, they can go before me and then I'll come in at the end.
Okay. Councillor Hopper?
Thank you. Good evening, Alan.
Good evening, Councillor.
It's been a bit of an education tonight, actually. But all I hear about is sort of viability. Now, I've been watching your face very carefully. I see you getting a hard time. And although I feel for you, I do actually think you know now how everybody feels. And I don't, this public consultation, I don't even think it should go to that, because we know where we like sort of how we feel about this. But the point I wanted to make is, Hetton people have been very understanding over the past 15 and 20 years. Now, overall, we generally we generate about £7.5 million in council tax, just domestic properties in our area, 7.5 million. Now, out of that, we've got rising antisocial behaviour. There's all sorts of serious crime going on. And what we're saying is we need to invest more in the school infrastructure. Now, it seems absolutely ridiculous to me to even throw open to a public consultation, put a proposal forward to try and close a nursery down that is scoring outstanding. Now, in the past, I think it's been in the past 15 years, there's been over 1,000 new houses built in and around the Hetton area. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is you say it's about viability. And what I'm saying is your committee, however you do it, you're tasked to keep these nurseries open. Not like come up with ways to like say, all right, if we close that one, it'll make them more efficient. If I was in your position, and I'm not as skilled as you, but if I was in your position, I would be going to the council and I'd be saying, look, these people don't want this nursery closing. The local council don't want it closing. And we can read a balance sheet. Most people who's on 8 can read a balance sheet, and we understand about the viability, but there's also something that's with these schools, it's struck into the DNA of the people in this community. And I've only found this out. I mean, I wasn't born in Hetton, I've only been here 20 years. And the way I've seen the community come together to keep this nursery open is like, it really, really has impressed me. It doesn't need to, you don't need to go forward with your proposal. What you need to go back is find the money to keep the place open. We're kicking in 7.2 million a year. What are we getting back, Alan? So it was more of a statement rather than a question. But if you want to come back on that with the viability of the money, there must be a pot of money somewhere out of that 7.2 million that we're kicking in that you can tap into. Over to you, Alan.
Yeah, firstly, I mean, thank you for your comments, Councillor. I would like to say that I feel that the people that have come into this call tonight, they should have their views represented, and I'm happy that they make those views to me. I think people have been very, very decent, to be honest. I don't feel that I've been given a hard time. I think people have been polite, they've been understanding, everyone's listened to my answers, and I'm very grateful for them doing that. I'm not trying to patronise anyone in any way, shape or form. I've done 10 years worth of these consultations now, and I know how some of them can go. With regards to the wider council funding, I look at things from a school perspective, and I look at things from a place perspective. And my major concern is how can we ensure that there are the number of nursery places that Hetton needs in 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And that's why this, from my perspective, has come down to viability. It would be a discussion for another part of the council, unfortunately, about things like council tax, what you get from council tax, and what you get from various funding streams. I can't comment on that. I can only comment on the work that I do, unfortunately. Right.
Okay. I understand. So basically, when all said and done, we're talking about viability, and we're talking. It's a financial decision. That's what the proposal is based on, finances.
The outline that I would give, and I understand that it's a popular nursery, it's a much loved nursery. I understand the quality of the nursery, but the proposal from my perspective is, how do you ensure that you can maintain nursery places, a number of nursery places for families who need nursery places in an area in the long term? So that includes 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. Is there enough daycare sufficiency? That's where I'm coming from. So it's, how do we make sure that in 10 years' time we're saying, look, we've got this many kids who need a nursery provision, but if you've had to close one because it ends up, I know people are saying, "Oh, you're just chucking numbers out." So what I would say is the average. I haven't taken last year's finances into consideration because I didn't think it was fair to put the COVID budget on it. And I haven't taken this year's into consideration because I don't think it's fair to put the impact through that on private income as well. So I looked at the period before COVID, period 2015 up to 2019, 20-ish, towards the back end of that. And at that point, the nursery was averaging a deficit of about £24,000 a year. That's with between £75,000 and £80,000 worth of additional support through the lump sum, of which they generated £35,000 of it. So if that wasn't there, it would have been, you know, £50,000 a year.
Can I ask you one more question, Alan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt. So, knowing that this nursery was going to be in deficit and they were in need of help for all these years, what provision has the Sunderland City Council or your department done to drive students, parents to go and seek places at that nursery to make sure that it was a viable nursery?
Again, the council doesn't promote one nursery over another, so we wouldn't say that people don't go to Hetton Lyons Nursery or don't go to Horton Nursery or go to Hetton Hall. We wouldn't say don't go to Easton Lane Primary School, go to Hetton Primary School. We don't make that sort of judgment.
So you don't actively promote the city council's nurseries?
Sorry, I've got somebody called LG on. Can you put it on mute, please? Sorry.
We wouldn't say to a parent, don't go to Hetton Lyons Nursery School, go to Hetton Hall Nursery School, in the same way that we wouldn't say don't go to Hetton Primary School, go to Hetton Lyons Nursery School. It's about parental choice.
Oh yes, I understand, but you don't promote the city council funded nurseries first above the private nurseries. So you don't say, right, here's your 4 nurseries, your 3 nurseries. Please choose these. These are city funded, council funded. There's the scores. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to get to the. We know what the real reason is. It's about money and the viability. But I actually asked a few questions a couple of weeks ago about, well, how do you actually get the people? How do you get the bums on seats? How do you get the parents down here? You know, like, can it not be made more viable? So that was what. Because we know it all comes down to pounds and pence.
Yeah, I think parents. So if you look at the spread of parents that go to a lot of nurseries, parents don't just come from one specific area. So I think parents do have the wherewithal. And one of the things that's been very apparent about this call is parents on this call, former parents on this call, are aware of things like quality. They're aware of Ofsted gradings. They're aware of inspect. So I think that information is out there in order to allow parents to make that informed decision, because it's very clear that the parents, certainly the ones we spoke to tonight, have that knowledge. But there's only, I suppose, a critical mass of parents.
Finished with Councillor Rome. Councillor Rome, and then finish with
Thank you very much for your time,
please. Thank you. I mean, I'm just aware time is getting on now. Councillor Rome. You're on mute. You're
right, yes. Leading on from what Councillor Hopper said, it was going to be one of my questions. When this issue first came up, a couple of, nearly 2 months ago, I Googled Sunderland City Council nurseries, and I would have thought that Sunderland City Council would be promoting these state-maintained nurseries, and they're not. That Hetley Hole nurseries, the first one that should have been flagged up should have been this nursery, and it wasn't. Now, I think Councillor Heron will back me up here. But 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, it was discussed at Hetton Town Council that the nursery was wasn't full, and we were all asked to try and promote the nursery so that it could keep going. And in my view, nothing has been done since then to promote Hetley Hole Nursery. And I agree with Councillor Deputy. It seems to me it's being run down on purpose. It's been neglected because Sunderland City Council, they want to shut it. And they're literally on this trajectory. A few months ago, there was a planning application for the 2 extra classrooms down at was it Hetton Lyons or Hetton School? There was no disclosure there when that planning application came through Hetton Town Council that there was a possibility that Hetley Hole Nursery was going to close, and I think that's absolutely disgraceful as well. That's all I have to say. But I will suggest some other points for funding later on in the meeting.
I
Thank
believe
you.
Councillor Heron wants to come back as well at it.
Can I
Yeah.
respond? One of the things I think people need to recognise as well is that the city, up until about 2012, there were rise and rolls across all schools. So in certain areas of the city, of which the Coalfields was one of them, we were seeing a number of additional primary places being taken up. So there were more kids who were actually around to take on provision. What we've seen over the past few years is Hetton has been an anomaly on the odd occasion. So I think the 2019-20 school intake, which would have been the 2016-17 nursery intake, that was a large year group. But other than that, what you've seen is you've seen year groups which are on average between 15 and 20 children lower than they were at this point 8-9 years ago. So I don't think I think that a lot of the parents who are in the area have actually chosen to take up those nursery places. I don't think it's because they're going elsewhere or they're not the nurseries haven't engaged or because they haven't promoted effectively. I just don't necessarily think that all the parents were there at that point. We would have expected new builds to balance that out and start to drive numbers up. But what we're seeing is the new builds are actually getting us to the position where we were 7 years ago. They're not taking us past that. So we're still not seeing through birth rate data, we're not seeing that trend go up to the point where we think that all these parents are going to come in and seek a nursery place. So I think a lot of it isn't necessarily down to the way that the nurseries are promoted and the way that the nurseries are operated. I think it's because there aren't as many parents there as there were 10 years ago. There aren't as many kids in there as there were 10 years ago. And that's not just Hetton, that's across the board. And again, it's contributed to the issues that are faced at the minute.
Okay. Councillor Heron, I believe you wanted to come in and then finish off with Councillor Turner.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alan, when I was a school governor, and it's about 6 or 7 years ago since I finished being a governor, the nursery education was under review nationally, how they were going to be refunded with the onset of the early years being brought in down to 2-year-olds and under. And it was also noted then that the local authority nurseries would be at a disadvantage, bearing in mind the heavy overheads that they've got to start with, the head teachers. Now, where I'm coming from is, I always looked at the budget sheets 3 years behind and 3 years in front. So that I was aware of what we'd spent previously on numbers of pupils, but also taking into consideration the capital that had to come from the local authority, part of that budget. How is the falling school rolls at the nursery, or are they increasing the intake? Because that has a bearing on the yearly budget that they get from the council.
Yeah.
If it's increasing, you're paying out more money from September until April for extra teachers that come in, until that catches up in April when the new financial year starts and you've got that in again. If that's compounded in the second year, you've then paid out twice. So that runs up quite a high deficit over time if you're doing this in consecutive years. Can you tell us what part of that budget is in that? I would like to come in sometime and discuss it with you in more fully. But that's the way the budgets work, and it has very little to do with 106 money or anything else. It's the way that the government standards has put down on the how you finance local authority nurseries.
Councillor, can I say that, and I'm sure the other councillors that are on this call would agree with me. I fully agree. I think nursery schools are fighting against a stacked deck to a certain extent. So nursery schools are now funded at more or less the same rate that a PVI or a childminder would be funded. But PVIs and childminders don't have the responsibility of a head teacher at whatever a head teacher salary plus on costs are. They don't have the requirement of a teacher at whatever a qualified teacher salary is at on costs. Yet they're given the same amount of funding. The lump sum was supposed to resolve that. It hasn't. So I mean, I think if you start looking back through trend data, there's a clear correlation between the change in funding methodology and the point where nursery schools across the country started to actually get into difficulty. And this is why I'm of the view that I'm not entirely sure what Ruth could have done, Ruth and our leadership team could have done differently. I think that, you know, all said and done, they've done commendably just to stay where they actually are. You know, you could say, well, it's, you know, I have said it's an average of £24,000 a year over the past 5 years, but that's in the grand scheme of things an outstanding result from Ruth and our team. From a birth rate perspective, I'm not seeing a change in the birth rate from the data that's coming through. You know, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, but it's not up. It's not up where we need it to be. You know, the kids aren't there. We thought that they would be brought in through housing. A strange anomaly is that when you start looking through the school years, we actually appear to lose children the more houses that are built. So how, and the other side of it is as well, is when you calculate what impact housing in, say, for example, Hetton might have on the sustainability of Hetton Nursery, not all parents would go to their local nursery settings. Some might decide to put their child in the nursery which is next to where they work. Some might decide to put their child in the nursery next to where their grandparents live. So it's very hard. It's very hard to sort of judge and get that overall base number on it. But I don't see a change in the birth rate that would provide the additional children needed to generate that much revenue.
The numbers on roll coming into the school. If there's more coming in, you have to outlay extra staff and extra toys and other goods that you're using in a nursery.
Yeah,
for 7 months before any money comes in. So you're already working 1 year behind. And if it happens a second year, that compounds the 2 years of debt where you've been actually in debt for 14 months. With the 7 months and the 5 months in the financial years that you're using in the educational years from September till the end of the year.
And I remember you and I having this conversation in great detail around the impact that this was having on primary specific provision as well, which would have been about 7 years ago now, I think, Councillor. So, yeah, I agree with you, but if you're looking at projections coming forward, we're saying, well, how do you cater and how do you judge it? The numbers aren't stacking up through the birth rate data, so it's all going to be on housing. And at the minute, the level of housing that's currently coming through appears to be just leveling things to where they already were a couple of years ago. It doesn't appear to be giving you the additional kids that are needed. So that discrepancy, I feel is always going to be there. And that's what could, so while a nursery can produce a projection which looks relatively accurate at the point that it's produced, it could ultimately put you in exactly the same place. I mean, the difference would be something like, again, I've talked about Hetton Primary School a lot. Hetton Primary School, where we know that the class sizes are 20, but they've got 25 in 2 classes, they've got 22 in one, they've got 24 in another. There's 154 children at a 140 place school. So you see it in that respect, but again, we're not seeing it at the earlier point.
Just one last thing, Madam Marcus, that came up on the screen. Some of the parents is asking if you can take back some of the things.
Yes, I was going to say that, Councillor Heron. Yeah, you can share the concerns.
I need the parents to be writing in all of their things what their children have achieved through the Hetton Nursery down the years, and the grandchildren, because my children and grandchildren have been through the nursery, and I'll be writing in. Thank you, Alan, for all you've done. You've done a good job tonight under difficult circumstances. I'll put it that way. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we have been asked if you can share the concerns with Sunderland City Councillors, you know, because apparently, you know, they're getting emails and they're not getting replies. So if you can share all the concerns that have been raised tonight.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. Councillor, I'm happy. I may be making a rod for my own back. If people want to have a discussion with me, I'm always happy to have a discussion. You know, I can give out a generic school organisation email address which comes directly to me and I'll respond to, or, you know, it's probably not too difficult. Anyone who's ever emailed the council to work out what my email address is, if I've been perfectly honest. If people want to have a discussion with me, I can have a discussion with them. It's likely that I'm not going to be able to give them the answers that they want, but I'm happy to take any of their comments on board, and they'll have 2 full consultation opportunities to get those views across as well. They'll have the informal and the representation. So if anyone would like to speak to me, by all means, drop me an email, give me a ring. I'm happy to chat. And that includes the town council as well.
Yeah, if you can send that email to the town clerk, and then we can pass it on if anybody needs it. Thank you, Alan. And I believe Councillor Turner, you want to finish off?
Yes, it's not for Alan actually. It's just a couple of points I want to make. I remember many years ago, I think there'd only be Councillor Heron who's still on the council, when we had the consultation about Hetton Primary School was going to actually close and they were going to build a school elsewhere. And the Hetton Town Council and the public raised so many concerns that the actual school didn't close. It wasn't built anywhere else. It wasn't knocked down. So I think that if we do this regarding this nursery school, we might be able to keep it going. If not, after the Sunderland City Council consultation has ended, and if the decision is to close Hetton Nursery School, I would like to propose that Hetton Town Council enters into negotiations with Sunderland City Council to take over the running of the Hetton Nursery School. I don't know whether councillors are in agreement or want to second that proposal. I don't want to.
Whether anybody's sort of looking there, Councillor Turner. Oh, Clark wants to speak.
Yes, I will just come in. Obviously, I've heard Councillor Turner's suggestion there. I would certainly have to check out the legalities of such an operation if that was to come to fruition. It's not something I've previously heard of. I understand the sentiment. It's not something I'm aware that parish or town councils is in a position to actually deliver on. No.
Thank you. Is that it, Councillor Turner?
Yes, it's just a shame that we don't want to lose the facility in Hetton.
Okay. Can I thank Alan for coming in here tonight and taking part and answering all the questions, you know, and also the members of the public that have spoke so well as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good Christmas.
And you.
And you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alan.
Can we move on?
Yeah. We are on to item 4, which is public participation. Now, obviously, that's run straight on from Alan's contribution there. I don't know whether we've exhausted that particular topic or if members of the public have any other items they wish to flag up.
I've not been asked for anybody to speak on any public participation, so.
Somebody at the bottom there, Councillor Pearson, William Galaxy.
Who?
William, he's on my just start speaking, William, I think.
Because I can't see him at all. Sorry.
Hi there. I just very quickly calling from the other side of the country. I just want to say thank you to you all. Everyone's gone through real bad stuff right now. You've restored my faith in local politics, and thank you to each and every one of you for standing up for the local community, because it means the world to everyone, and I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
To you.
Same to you, William.
Same to you. Thank you. Okay, is that it for that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Pearson, we're losing people now anyway.
Yes.
Hannah's got a hand up, or Hannah had a hand up.
She had a hand up, but I think she was just clapping at the last one. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
If we move on to item 5, this is the minutes of the November meeting. I'll just bring them on screen. Oh, I had this trouble last time as well. Oh. Oh. There we are. Yes, these are minutes of the 16th of November. As I say, all members have had these. There are 6 pages there. I do apologise. The draft that was originally sent out referred to somewhere called Lordman Street, which I clearly misheard. It meant to say Morden Street. That's now been incorporated in this version. Skim through.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose that these minutes are adopted.
I'll second that, Councillor Elvin.
Seconded by David Geddes. Sorry,
I
Councillor
think the
Geddes.
easiest thing to ask is there any dissent?
No, I can't see any.
Is there any dissent? Can somebody speak up, please? Yeah, it looks as if it's approved. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Turner, yes?
I don't think my name was on the present. I'm sure I was at that meeting in November.
Have a look.
I think I was. Oh, was there anything else on?
Councillor Turner, you put an apology for absence in. You at the Sunderland City Council meeting.
Oh, yes, we were. That's right. Sorry about that.
You had me worried for a minute there.
I hadn't said it, don't worry. It's an age thing, you know.
Okay, thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
Item 6, reports from members, any ward matters.
Councillor Waterston? Sorry.
Yes, I've got a couple. First of all, I've got to go back to an issue I raised early last year, or I think it was 2019. I think the clerk was involved. We sent photographs to the City Council regarding the parking at Red Hills in Pearson's estate, where there were parking bans and work bans on the grass verges. I've had a resident contact me yesterday and send photographs showing me that, again, they are putting the heavy wagons and vans onto the grass verges, and it's an absolute eyesore. And she's asking if there's anything we can do about that. This is the second time we've had a resident come back at us about this one. So I wonder if we can make a request to Sunderland City Council to get out and see what they can do about that. I've got the photographs, and it is a disgrace. Second one is I've been asked to requisition bin at Union Street. They're not bothered where it is in Union Street, whether it's near the chapel or if it's further up. But there's an awful lot of litter being dropped by parked cars, so they do require a rubbish bin. The next one is Irwin Street. This has been going on for a while now. It's an unadopted road, as we well know, and Hetton has many of them. But Union Street's had a real bashing in the last couple of months with regards to the situation we had in the Sunderland City Council allotments. Through the situation, we had to have heavy road, what do you call them, these big, huge wagons that do all of the demolition wagons, using the unadopted road. They left it as an absolute quagmire, disgraceful. We have heard that it's going to be resurfaced in the near future. But I want you to press or ask if they're going to bring it along Irwin Street and along the side towards what would be the avenue. It's a continuous road. It comes round the front of Irwin Street and round the side. The whole lot's been disrupted and destroyed by these heavy demolition wagons. And I think they need to confirm what they're going to do. As up to this date, since the carry on at the allotments, they've done absolutely nothing. They've taken their time. And these people are an absolute mess. I wouldn't like to have it outside my door. So I'd ask it again if we can contact them and see when they're going to do anything about it. The next issue I've got is CCTV cameras in Hetton. There was a CCTV camera placed on the, as you go out of Hetton, opposite the entrance onto the Burn Lane down to Richie's Garage. There was a CCTV camera placed there because there was some serious goings on, antisocial behaviour, to say the least. Someone's car was damaged and there was a personal attack made. The CCTV camera was put up when a request was sent to our MP Bridget Phillipson, and she quickly got a CCTV camera put up. Last Tuesday, said CCTV camera was taken down. So we requested some information as to why they've done that. And the reply from Sunderland City Council Antisocial Behaviour Department is, the camera's been taken down as there have been no instances reported since it went up. Can you explain to me where the logic is in that? There's been no instances reported because the CCTV camera's there. I would like you to go back and ask them what they mean by that. Surely to goodness, if you put something up and it works, you leave it there. You don't take it down. It's beyond me. That really is beyond me. So I would like to follow up to that, please. That's all of mine. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Is Councillor Defty? Sorry. Yep.
There we go. Yeah, it's a couple of issues. Again, it's been brought up numerous times. Car parking. I actually drove down past the school, coming down from Moseley, and both sides of the road. They're parked on both sides of the road on the pavements, and traffic trying to come up towards Moseley, traffic coming down from Moseley. It's impossible. We need to get some double yellow lines on one side. And I'm afraid that you're going to have to get some traffic officers there and start dishing out some tickets and dish them out every day to the same people, because it's the same people every time. And then they might start there parking somewhere else and actually walking, getting some exercise. The other one isn't quite my ward, but a couple of residents of Regent Street, and Councillor Dodds has already reported this once, but cars again parked up on the pavement, can't get by with pushchairs and having to go on the road. And I think a couple of the residents have had people who've actually knocked on the doors and said, what you parking the cars there for? And they're not the residents, the people from elsewhere parking there. So once again, I think it needs a visit from traffic enforcement, or one side of the road once again, get some yellow lines put down so they can't park. The residents are actually parking in the street behind. So it's the top near the carpet shop, if anybody wants a reference. I think Councillor Dodds has already reported it once, but I don't think anything, well, it's been followed up, but it hasn't been followed up again. Thank you. That's all from me now.
Councillor Watterson, did you want to come back? Sorry, before the town clerk.
Yes, I'm sorry, I missed the one out. I'm going back here. This is a concern that was made at least a year, 2 years ago by our once Councillor Paul Holt. On a regular basis, he used to bring this up. I've been approached again about the parking down at Hetton Lines Industrial Estate on both sides of the road. This guy was nearly knocked out when they pulled over one of the belts, one of the strappings from the thing. He was walking past it and it came down. It nearly hit him on the head. It's no better down there. I'm not sure what happened when Councillor Holt used to bring it up, if anything did happen, but the matter is still ongoing down there, and I wonder if we can have something done about it, please. Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. The clerk wanted to come in, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, just in response to Councillor Defty's queries, can you drop me an email with specific street names, please? And similarly, Councillor Watterson's comments there,
Yeah.
Are there any suggestions about what might be able to be done? So thank you.
Okay, any other councillor issues? Councillor Ward matters. Councillor Hopper?
Just fly tipping at the stables up at Moseley, fly tipping on the field down near Peak Car, and fly tipping at the back of the bungalows at Moseley. Gen 2's been informed, the council have been informed, taking quite a while to clear it up. It just seems to be a daily occurrence. Nobody's really bothered. I had a chat about, I mean, I'm in full agreement with Councillor Watson about the cameras. You know my thoughts on it, so I don't really want to go down that route. I'm still trying to, although our plan, if you like, about the cameras, that's all been, the presentation, everything's ready to go. COVID stopped us, and then there's been a funding. So I'm just tracking down funding at the minute. That was just as an added thing, but really just the fly tipping. I've already spoke to Councillor Turner in her role as a city councillor about the barriers and others, and I believe Graham's going to respond later on the meeting. So yes, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councillor Rome. Councillor Rome,
Hang
yeah.
on.
That's it.
Yeah.
You've gone back on mute, Councillor Rome. Right. No, back on. You're back on mute, Councillor Rome. You need to come off mute. That's it. That's
right.
it.
Hopefully that's
Right.
it. Just
That's
like
it.
to say that over the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've had several instances of fly tipping, empty properties, open gates, dangerous situations. I've just gone straight onto the Sunderland City Council website. They've got a really easy page now for reporting all this, and I've had, within a day or 2 days, I've had a response and action has been taken. So if we can all try and do that, it saves the town clerk lots of work, and I'm seeming to get a pretty good response. Thanks.
Yes, I get an answer back from them as well, which is very good. Yeah, thank you. Is anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes.
Yeah. Kyle Coulson, yes, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Roadworks. I'm not talking about emergency roadworks where gas mains or water mains burst. I'm talking about general improvements. Now, a few weeks ago, we had a ludicrous, well, from Sunderland, not ludicrous, 2 roads closed in East Rain at the same time. 2 projects, more or less the same sort of work going on. Very expensive machinery on hire. Now, would it be more sensible to do 1 job and have maybe 4 men on the job rather than 2 on each? It could cut down the very expensive machinery plant hire, and it caused great inconvenience to the residents of East Rain and Raton Bridge area. Now, I was fortunate enough to meet one of the supervisors, and I said, what about, it's taken a long time this, and he said, well, we've had a couple of lads off with the kung flu. Well, can't dispute that. But then I learned, I said, well, 1 week there's only 17 hours work with very expensive on hire from George Vardy machinery standard. Oh, he said, well, and I said, they're all gone by 11 o'clock on a Friday. Oh, they only do a 4.5-day week, council workers. Now, 4.5-day week is actually just a 4-day week, because when you're ordering ready-mix concrete or tarmac, if you run out at 10 o'clock on a Friday, well, that's no good. Whereas if it's through the week, you'll get more in the afternoon. So you have 2 diversions going on, causing great inconvenience to people, and they're on virtually a 4-day week. I'm not talking about when it's contracted out, that might be different, but council workers on virtually a 4-day week. Now, Gillis Lane seems to be finished, the roadworks there, but they've closed the left turn, no left turn, the great big solid barriers. The job seems to be finished. It's been like this for about a month to 6 weeks now, diverting traffic along Hawley End, past the school and down through a housing estate. That seems a bit silly to me. So the main points I'd like the clerk to address is important roadworks is causing inconvenience. Try not to do close 2 roads at the same time. To me, that's common sense, but with Sunderland, it's not very common. And why the left turn from Gillis Lane onto the 183 at Burnetell is closed with barriers, although the job seems to be finished. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Everyone finished? All the councillors finished? Yeah. Can we move on? Ward matters finished?
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Pearson.
Sorry, Councillor Dodds, yeah? I cannot
just
see you with your hand.
It's all right.
Sorry.
Just in response to Councillor Defty, we did put Sunderland Council did put a letter out with regards to the parking on Regent Street, because they were parking that far on the footpath that people with wheelchair and disability aids couldn't get past. And there was a letter sent out to all residents, but there is still an ongoing issue with the top of the street, double parking and to me, sometimes the buses struggle to get up and down the street because of the parking on both sides. And I am one of the residents who park in the back street because I can't get parked in the front street.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 7.
Yeah, Sunderland City Councillors from Hetton and Cock Hill wards. Council receive an update and members raise any concerns. Don't think we have any city councillors here tonight for this item. Nope, looks like moving on to item 8. Oh, it's me.
Hetton Town Council, yeah.
Just a few things to bring council up to date with. First of all, I was asked to invite the Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumbria along to this evening's meeting. I did do that, but unfortunately she's on annual leave this evening. I was also asked to write to Robert Jenrick MP. He's the Secretary of State for Communities and Housing. Wasn't able to make this meeting. I have asked for availability into 2021, but I haven't heard back yet, I'm afraid. My next update is just on Facebook, which is a recurring theme here. I still haven't quite got to the bottom of how some comments are appearing on Facebook. It seems to be somewhat anomalous, but what I have done is on the Facebook page, on our pinned tweet, I've made it clear that comments aren't monitored and they will not be responded to. So just to manage any expectations that anybody who's getting comments actually through to the site, they won't get a response. But there is an offer for them to contact me directly via email. My next item is the feedback we had from Sunderland City Council to issues flagged up at both the October and November meetings, and I sent details of those out to all members last Thursday when they came in. I think most of the issues had been tackled. There are one or two which are rumbling on. One which Councillor Hopper alluded to was about barriers at Pete Car. We were asked to, in the update from Sunderland City Council, it was stated that further information was asked about the locations back in October. I have done a bit of a trawl today, and we did actually provide that information in October. They've had it all again, so hopefully we will be able to make some progress, or at least get an initial response from the City Council on that. And the final aspect to bring members up to date with is I've previously mentioned on a couple of occasions I've been working with City Council officers to try and improve the feedback we get to issues that are raised, particularly when members contact me directly, or when members of the public contact me, or when members of the council contact the City Council directly. And I haven't been able to make any progress. That the officer I was dealing with has not been able to get the required outcome I was looking for. So I'm afraid it's back to the drawing board on that one, although I am interested to hear from both Councillor Rome and Councillor Pearson this evening that they have been getting some feedback from the City Council, which is very encouraging. To say it's a little bit more problematical on some of the issues that I'm reporting directly on behalf of members. I don't fully know why that is. I've got some thoughts. I now have an inquiry out to another officer in the customer services team. I'm afraid I haven't heard back yet, but I will be pursuing that in the new year, and hopefully we'll get some resolution. Sometimes we get acknowledgements, but we don't actually find out the outcome of things. And sometimes we don't hear anything at all. So it's important that we just understand what's happening there in the process at Sunderland, and hopefully I'll get a resolution in the new year through a new lead I'm following up. Okay. Any queries on my report? Great. You haven't all fallen asleep, have you? No, I'm looking. Right, I'm watching it. Thanks very much for that. Item 9 is the financial report. I'll just bring that on screen. Is this going to work? Yeah, the key thing to highlight in the financial report is the income. We have obtained from Appleton Quarry Products the community donation grant of £5,000 for the current financial year. I don't think there's anything else specifically to highlight. No. When I sent the financial report out, I did highlight to members that I've included the 4 donations which were agreed at the November meeting. Although they've previously been approved, they're on this report just so that they're properly documented for audit purposes. It's okay. Any queries on the financial report?
If there are no queries, Madam Mayor, I'd like to propose that they're approved.
Could I just ask a question, Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Herron.
It's just the clerk reports additional hours worked. Could we not have the number of hours in that?
The details, as previously agreed, are sent to members of the staffing committee, and they are approved by in advance by Councillors Pearson and Hopper. So that information is out there as previously agreed.
It was the number of hours worked, that's what I was asking.
That's not currently included in the financial report. What you're actually getting in there is the financial consequence of it, which is the base information, if you like. So was there another query there?
I can hear somebody talking over, but
yeah. As I say, the process that's being followed is that which was agreed at the, I think it was the July meeting of the staff committee. So the financial implications are reported on a monthly basis. And the actual detailed information is sent to members of the staffing committee. So that answers the query there.
In that case, can I propose, Madam Mayor, again that the financial report is approved?
Okay. Again, I think for the, is there any dissent? Right, that's great. Thank you very much. Item 10.
Renewal governance.
Now, at the November meeting, I did hint that there might have been a requirement for an extraordinary meeting, and you'll all be delighted and relieved to know that there wasn't a requirement. I had hoped for the November meeting to be able to present this letter from Mazars, the external auditor, for the purposes of continuity, but it wasn't ready in time. The audit has been signed off. There are a couple of minor points which the external auditor have raised, which are detailed on page 2 there, and they're minor scope for improvement. One, schoolboy error in double counting some bank interest. And the other aspect, it's quite interesting because I provided a range of information to Mazars to back up some of the variances between the current, the 1920 and the previous financial year. And of course, once you send it and explain the one some more, for example, I had to provide documentary evidence to support a couple of the aspects. So they've been very thorough there. There's not what is known as an issues arising report, which is very good. And we haven't got what is known as a qualified opinion. So effectively, this is a clean bill of health. Needs to report. Any queries on the Mazars letter at all? It's really just for noting. The restated and updated accountability statement was signed off by the external auditor, and it has been published on the website in line with the legal requirements.
Clerk would be commended for doing this because it isn't an easy job to do the final accounts.
Any comments at all?
Just a well done, Mr. Town Clerk, from me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
I would
you
also
should be commended. Yeah.
thank you. I'd also just like to thank the internal auditor, who was a an excellent help and assistance as well. Thank you for that. Okay. Um, 10. Good. Item 11. Flagpoles at Easington Lane. Members will recall that in time for Remembrance Day, we had the flagpoles installed in Hetton Mini Park, and there'd also been discussions at Management and Policy Committee, and I'm sure it was referenced here at full council about flagpoles for Easington Lane War Memorial. I have queries out at the moment with the supplier around their court. But I'm asking council this evening if they're happy to approve the installation at a cost of £700, and that's net, i.e. without VAT, of around about 560. That's assuming the quote remains the same. I have a query out at the moment. I suspect I've been snookered by Christmas holiday period. But in principle, are we okay with accepting that headline figure?
Okay with me.
Madam Mayor, yes, I'd like to propose that.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Turner.
It's just, can I just remind everyone that next year will be the 100th anniversary of Easington Lane Clock. So it would be nice if you could get them up for then.
Yep, fine.
Madam
Yeah, I mean,
Mayor, if I can come in, we can get
yes.
them up as quickly as Sunderland City Council give us a licence.
No, I was conscious of the anniversary which Councillor Turner just mentioned there, and it's really just to try and move this along as quickly as possible. Okay, looks like everybody's okay with this.
Yeah.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 12, this is the application for the Community Grant Award, which I'll bring on screen. This is from the Hetton 200 group. I can confirm that the requisite supporting paperwork has been provided and it is in order. So what you've all had circulated is the actual application form, and I'll display that now. There we are. Hopefully members will have had the opportunity to have a look at this. Yeah, they're seeking £500 as a contribution towards the creation of a community sculpture. And there's some further detail in there about the background to that. Any views, queries? What does council wish to do?
Madam Mayor, if there's no objections, I'd like to propose that we make this donation.
I'll second that, Councillor
I'd like to second that. I'd like to second that.
Yeah, Councillor.
A rush on for seconders here, mind.
I was going to say Councillor Geddes and Councillor Watson together. We'll give you.
Madam Mayor, can I come in again?
Yes. I don't know where you are, Councillor Ward. Oh, you're there.
You can't see me very well.
I can't see you, that's it.
I know it's in the dark, it's the way the lights are. It's
right.
just, I'm on the Legacy Committee. I've just realised for the Hetton 200 Railway, so I really need to declare an interest. I hadn't realised that at the beginning.
Well, so am I then in that case, but I thought it was, if we didn't have a pecuniary interest, we were okay.
Yeah, I declare a non-financial interest, Madam Mayor, as well.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, I'll second it.
I was going to say Councillor did, yeah.
Sorry,
Councillor
somebody else
Geddes.
said they had a non-financial interest. I know it was Councillor Heron and someone else.
It was me.
And Councillor
Geddes. Councillor Geddes, did you
Yeah.
say?
Yes.
Okay.
And
And
Councillor
me.
Turner.
Yeah, we had you, yeah.
Okay then.
You've got me down.
Yes.
That's fine. So just going back to the earlier part of the discussion on this item, it seemed to have unanimous approval anyway, and even taking into account the 4 members who declared an interest of one form or another, it's immaterial. in terms of numbers. Yeah. Again, I would just say, is there any dissent to the proposal to award the £500? Unanimous. Okay. Thank you for that. Item 13, Christmas. Just around the corner. Just around the corner. There were just a couple of things to bring to members' attention here. At the last meeting, you'll recall, I was asked to explore the feasibility of getting an additional Christmas tree for Hetton Mini Park, and it's been a little bit fraught with difficulties. The City Council were fine in principle in terms of granting a licence for that, but we had to get quotations for the supply and installation of lighting. And we had one quotation from the established supplier, which came in, I think, around about £2,500 to do that. And then we had another quote from Sunderland City Council's internal building division, which was in the region of £500. So there was a significant discrepancy, which then warranted some further investigation. Basically, the higher quote incorporated some essential renewal works, for want of a better phrase. The bottom line is that the existing power supply in the mini park was deemed or regarded as unsafe, so we were unable to go ahead with that, especially as time was getting on. Neither of the two contractors were able to install the necessary upgrade to meet our deadlines for Christmas. What has transpired is that a refurbishment of the lighting in the mini park will now include an upgrade to the power supply. So fingers crossed, we'll be all right for next year. Yeah. So that's just a bit of background as to why there isn't a tree going in the mini park as we had originally envisaged. And the other thing just to comment on is the Hetton tree located outside of the nursery. To my surprise, at the November meeting, I was told by members that the tree was already illuminated when I hadn't expected it to be lit up until the 19th of November. I subsequently found out that the lighting up of the tree on the 16th was a test. And unfortunately, it would appear that the following day the tree was vandalised. Now, a couple of members alerted me to this, and when I drove past, sure enough, one side of the tree, as if you're going towards Hetton, it was almost in darkness. There's been much emailing between myself and the contractors, and they wanted several £100s to repair it initially. And after some continued exchanges, the cost was reduced, and then they did it for nothing. And to my horror, following other reports from members, when I drove past last Thursday on my way home, it looked worse than ever, and that's the condition it remains in. Basically, the contractor have said they've done what they can, and that's it. So it's a lovely tree, but it's just not very well lit, I'm afraid. I don't know that there's any way to improve it in the run up to Christmas now.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. When I found out that it was not very well illuminated, I went to have a look at it, and I could find absolutely nothing wrong, and nothing to substantiate the claim that it had been vandalised. After subsequent correspondence with our illustrious provider, they eventually came back and said, "Oh yes, we'll repair it," as the clerk has advised, and then it still didn't work. And when I went back to look at it to see what they'd done, all they'd done was cut one of the wires, which hadn't previously been cut, and wrapped it round a tree branch, presumably to justify the fact that they believed it had been vandalised, which I personally don't believe it had been vandalised. And neither do I believe the one at East Rainton was vandalised, because it's from the same problem. One part was blocked out. There was absolutely nothing wrong that I could see. All the fittings were there. There was no broken wires the first time I looked at it. So it suddenly appeared as a broken wire. One had been cut when they came out to supposedly repair it. And then I'm highly suspicious I just think there were faulty lights in the first place, and I'm very disappointed with Balfour Beatty. And unfortunately, we have no choice but to use them because they're the preferred contractor. And of course, procurement with council is absolutely appalling. They get a contract for X number of years, and it's a monopoly, and they're allowed to increase their prices every year by a set percentage, which is in the contract. And it's typical council procurement. It's absolute disgrace. You know, we're going to go to one source. But anyway, my personal point of view is that the faulty lights, and I don't think it was at all that either the claim that the tree at East Rainton or Hetton was vandalised. I say none of them showed any signs whatsoever. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So we are where we are with the Christmas trees, I'm afraid.
Councillor Rome wants to come in as well.
Well, I would just like to say thank you, Madam Mayor, that both Councillor Waterston and I saw the trees in that state on the it was at dusk, on the night they were testing them. They couldn't have been vandalised because they'd only been up a couple of hours.
No.
So I think we should be asking for
Yeah, that's right.
the money back.
You're going to be testing my negotiating skills again. Right. I mean, we haven't yet had the count in from Balfour Beatty. Do you want me to alert them?
Well, it's the second year running they've let us down, isn't it?
Yeah, I would agree
totally
that you should alert them. But of course, it is, of course, their word against ours. And they'll have some knowledge of building and electricity. You know, they will turn around and obviously say, well, we're the experts, you know, we're right, you're wrong. But there's absolutely no signs. And I asked if Councillor Coulson would go and inspect the tree at Rainton and see if he can find any sign of damage, because there's none whatsoever. But you can only ask. If you don't ask, you don't get.
Okay.
May I also suggest that next year, when they test the trees, that one of us is present at the tree to ensure it's working, because they just seem to be getting away with murder.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Councillor Owen. I do, because this year's trees, it's depressing to look at, to be quite honest. It's a decent tree this year, but the lighting has let it down badly.
Yeah.
I've actually gone around a couple of different areas, West Raton, Merton, and the trees are brilliant. You know, they're lit up. They've got the old-fashioned warm lighting, the bulbs. This new cold white or blue light, tiny little lights. They're very, very poor. They don't give off a good show at all. And for, you know, for the amount of money that we're being charged, I think it's a bit of a. We really need to ask questions about it, because it's pathetic this year. I mean, I'm surprised. I think because of COVID, we've got off pretty scot-free from criticism from the residents, because it's a poor show. So, you know, trees are better, lighting's worse.
Okay, Councillor Defty, yeah.
Can I just suggest, when we put our little report in, we ask for the specification of the lights installed, and then we can go and have a look at B&M and see if they've got them.
No, you can't do that.
Well, it's produced some mirth, that, but when I was speaking to the city council about the potential for a tree to go in the mini park, because of the impending timescales, he did suggest I have a trip to Home Bargains. so I did. And they were cleared out. They didn't have a light. There wasn't a light to be had in Home Bargains. There you go. There you go. So I did try.
Rory bought them all.
It wasn't to be. It wasn't to be. Councillor Pearson, Councillor Turner still appears to have a hand raised.
Is she? All right. Sorry, Councillor Turner. You're on mute as well, Councillor Turner.
Alpha Beatty's cut her electric off as well.
I was going to say this.
No,
I think I'm trying to save on the lucky.
Has it gone down now?
Well, your hand's gone down, but the lights haven't come on.
I think it's because I'm in a different area with the computer.
Right. Yes. Well.
Tell me out.
Money in the meter.
Okay. Right. Okay, I'll alert Balfour-Beatty that we're not happy with the costs and the service. Watch this space. Watch this space. Item 14, Coalfield Area Committee. Councillor Rome?
Yes, as all councillors know, the full details of the committee meeting agenda, it's available online if they'd like to look at it. But the committee is basically a rubber stamping exercise for all the decisions made by the various boards and meetings beforehand, and very little discussion takes place. But some points are worth mentioning that were of particular interest to me. First one was that there was talk about the Sunderland City Council housing services, and it was reported that the council has approved £59 million to deliver new social housing across empty properties, bungalows and supported accommodation. I still find it really hard to get my head around this because Sunderland sold off its social housing and surrounding open spaces to Gen 2 many years ago. And I remember this being discussed, I think it was at the 18th of November meeting last year, when Graham Scanlon, who is the Assistant Director of the Housing, and Julie Wearmouth, Housing Manager from the Council, were present when the survey that was taking place in and around Fairy Street was being discussed. There were several issues raised at that meeting which couldn't be addressed at the time by Mr. Scanlon and Miss Wearmouth, but Mr. Scanlon said he would be happy to attend a future Hetton Town Council meeting to respond to the wider housing issues raised. So I'd like to propose to the Council that he be invited to come to our next meeting to discuss their activities in the Hetton area, because what was presented at the Coalfield Area Committee was what went on in the Coalfield area. So I don't know if I could have a seconder for that.
Certainly can.
Yep.
Yeah, seconded.
Thank you. Another item was, I noticed, was that a feasibility study is being developed for Elmore Golf Course future use. And I think you'll see this week that the town clerk sent out details about a public consultation that is taking place online about this. I accidentally came across that when I was looking for something else on the Sunderland City Council website. So if councillors could be aware of that. Another item was online, the documents online before the Coalfield Area Committee, a week or so before, there was no police report on that bundle of papers. Sorry, there was nothing in the bundle of papers sent to me about police report. And I think we'd already asked the people, Northumbria Police, to provide a monthly report to us, or a report to us when they report it to the Coalfield Area Committee. Anyhow, apparently there was a meeting, our MP Bridget Phillipson had an antisocial behaviour meeting, online meeting last week, and a member of the public alerted her to the fact that there was no Northumbria Police report on the Coalfield Area Committee. But lo and behold, the 11th hour police report did appear online, and we have a newly appointed police sergeant Hudspeth for the area, and he...
That's what they call it?
Hudspeth?
I know.
Yeah. Anyhow, he said that compared to the previous period last year, the youth ASB is up 5%, and violence against the person without injury is up 12% in the Coalfields Area Committee. Now, he also highlighted that the youth antisocial behaviour around the Hetton Town Trust football ground and the easy access to it over the wall. And he also pointed out that he hadn't been able to contact anybody from the trust to discuss the problems. But I understand that I did let the trust know that. I understand that a mobile contact number has now been put on the trust website. So, and I've put them all in touch with each other. Thank you. Oh no, the last but most important thing, sorry. Discussion about the nursery school. While that was being discussed, there is over £351,000 available in funding from the committee from the neighbourhood fund. For some reason it hasn't been spent. And I was just thinking, how about we ask the Coalfield Area Committee if Hetton Nursery can have some funding to help it through its financial difficulties, bearing in mind Hettonley Hole Nursery is, isn't it 70 years this year or next year since it was opened, and they do have an allocation under celebrating heritage and local events. Couldn't we make the nursery school a heritage event and get them some money?
Why not?
Yeah,
Here, here.
excellent idea, Councillor.
Here, here.
Yes.
Excellent idea.
Councillor Rome, can I ask you a
Yes.
question? There was a document that was attached for the meeting, and I was just curious. Do you get it? Are you able to ask questions?
Well, I did try to ask a question about something, but I usually get told to shut up.
In
the nicest possible
How
way.
about a request then? Not a question, a request. 2 requests. One, 5 bungalows, £900,000. Is that?
Yes, I saw that figure too, and that's why I want this guy to come along.
I just want to know whether it's correct.
That's £200,000 to build a bungalow. I think that is. I don't know where they get the
Well,
figures
I just
from.
want to know. I just want to know whether it's correct. And the other thing was I suppose the reference is Cragdale Gardens. Can we see if we can get the Caulfield Area Committee on side to actually send an email or a document to the Planning Committee just to say that we've got 64 houses that are empty, 20 bungalows, and 19 various units of supported accommodation. So that obviously goes over the 86 that's required at desperate social housing.
Can I suggest we discuss this when we come up to the Cragdale Gardens planning application? Which is
Yes, you can, Councillor Rome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that's the Coalfield Area Committee finished.
Madam Mayor, if I could just come in. I think it's an excellent proposal to Councillor Rome has made in respect of the Hetton Nursery School. But of course, we are totally reliant on our elected city councils. They're the only ones who can sponsor a request. I'm sure on behalf of us all and the supporters of Hetton Nursery School, we would ask them to consider sponsoring a request for funds to assist the nursery school in its to celebrate its 70th year.
Can we make a note, please, Town Clerk, that the City Councillor, Councillor Thornton, has left. I don't know how long ago she actually left, but she's left the building.
Well, Councillor Turner's still on.
She's still there. She's dark, I know, but she's still there.
Do you think you might sponsor us, Councillor Turner?
Councillor, right, yeah.
For the nursery.
Yeah, for the proposal.
Well, we'll just have to see what happens at it'll have to go to the area committee first, won't it?
Yeah, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
One of us will have to do it, will we?
Yeah.
Right.
Madam Mayor, I think the councillor should know. She's been on the city council long enough. She should know how the grant system for the.
Oh, I do. We can get the community forms.
Yeah. Why did you say
to do it? But I thought you meant you were wanting to put it to the area committee themselves for some reason.
No, what I said was, if the money comes from the area Coalfield committee, it has to be a Sunderland City councillor that has to sponsor the application.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Will
that's
you
what I
do
said.
that for us, Councillor Turner?
Yes, we can try.
Thank you.
Councillor Defty?
Yeah, it's just It's just Councillor Rome. There was also, she was going to have a request for a meeting with Hetton Town Trust. Has that been done yet?
Councillor, if I can interject, that's on the next
That's on the next item. The next
Carry
item's
on.
Hetton Town Trust, yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm excited. It's Christmas. Put me lights up.
Sorry, Councillor Town Clerk.
Yeah, can I just come back to the Coalfield Area Committee request? I just need to understand in a little more detail what that looks like with the nursery.
Well, we'll have to get some wording together to go on for Councillor Turner to put it on the form, but have to put our thinking caps on for that. But it's basically, we'll use, if possible, Councillor Turner can advise us with all her years of experience the best way to word this so that we can get some funding.
So
it might have to come from the nursery themselves, because it's not really it's not like the council would then have to give it to the nursery, wouldn't they? So I'd imagine the nursery would have to apply themselves, I would think.
Is the head teacher still on?
Well, we can work with the nursery to get the wording.
Ruth's still here.
Ruth's still here, but yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest that we, Madam Mayor, through the chair, I would suggest that we speak to the headmistress about how it works. Councillor, esteemed councillor, seems very vague on us as to how the system works, but I think it does have to initially emanate from the person who wants the money, and then they have to get one of the local councillors to take it up on their behalf. So,
yes, that's right, because the money's not actually coming to Hetton Town Council. It's got to go to the nursery, so the nursery would have to do it.
Ruth's saying her microphone isn't working, but she's quite happy to talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right, the next item is 15 Hetton Town Trust. Councillor Rome.
Yeah, well, it's always difficult to report on Hetton Town Trust meetings, as it's insisted by the chair that all minutes and all matters are kept confidential. So I am limited in what can be revealed, unless I want to run the risk of being chastised and humiliated by the chair. But I can report that there has not been a single meeting since the 11th of March, which is over 9 months. I can also report, although I have served as the Town Council nominated representative for 19 months, it wasn't until the beginning of this year that I became aware that I was actually a trustee and I had a vote. And it wasn't until this month, back just 2 or 3 weeks ago, that I received notification from the Charity Commission welcoming me as a new trustee. Following a mandate from the last Hetton Town Council regarding the situation at the Barnet Cafe as one of Hetton Town Council's nominated representatives on the trust, I asked the chairman, Alex Scullion, to convene a meeting. He refused. I then looked up the rules regarding the governance of the trust, which stated that if 2 or more trustees requested a meeting, then one should be convened. Both myself and Madam Mayor, who was also a trustee, requested a meeting. Alex Scullion again refused to convene one, as he said there was no need. Now, apparently, the trust has responded to Little Gem's nursery proposal, but neither the proposal nor the trust response has been shared with me, and I don't think it's been shared with Madam Mayor either. This is another example of a Hetton secret society run by a cabal with their own agenda, which does not appear to reflect the needs or wishes of the local residents. There is no public scrutiny. Considering its history and origins, I believe it started with Eppleton miners donating a penny a week from their wages to provide a sporting facility, I think it was cricket and football, for the people of the area. The trust does not appear to be fulfilling the hope and aspirations of its founders. I regret to advise the council that unless there is a seismic shift in the governance and administration of the trust with more openness and transparency, I will have very little to report in the future.
Councillor Geddes, did you want to come in?
Yes, please. Having spoken to Little Gems some time ago, I know that they got a reply, and it was a very curt reply. And if my memory serves me, I think I got sent it. So I'll check my emails, and if I have, I'll forward it to everyone.
Thank you.
After I've spoke to Little James, of course.
Yeah, no problem.
But it was a rather curt reply, I've got to say. Dismiss it. Can I ask Councillor Warren and Councillor Pearson, if there's been no meeting around the Little Jams, how on earth did the committee close it?
Well, that's because there's a little group of people who just make the decisions and don't think they should consult anyone else.
Thank you. That's the answer I was after. Yeah.
So it reminds me, Madam Mayor, of a previous organisation that used to operate that way.
Oh yeah, sorry, LG, whoever you are, you've got your microphone on. Can you go to mute, please? Yes. Thank you.
Can I ask the town clerk, sorry, Madam Mayor, with your permission, can I ask the town clerk, as a body, I know the trust is a charity, but surely there's got to be some recourse when, you know, there should be a meeting, and obviously 2 members of the trust have asked for a meeting. You know, this can't be right. It surely cannot be right. Or is this guy just a law unto himself? There must be something we can do, Mr. Town Clerk.
You raised a similar query at the November meeting.
I did.
And the action arising from that was that I would write to the Hetton Town Trust on behalf of our 2 trustees. And that is the action that I took, and Councillor Rome has reported the outcome of that request to Town Council this evening. Just listening to your comments, I think you're saying what recourse do we have as a Town Council if we feel that our 2 trustee representatives are not able to exercise the powers? And I don't know the answer to that, but again, I can certainly ask the question, and it may be a question that I ask of the charity commissioners.
Can I propose something then? And I already know what the outcome will be. Can I propose that we ask the chair of the trust to come onto one of our Zoom meetings? I know, okay, I know.
What the answer would be, but yeah.
Yes, well, we know what the answer would be, but at the end of the day, let's give the guy an opportunity. Or the vice chair.
I don't think there is a vice chair.
That's Councillor Turner. There is Councillor Turner's vice chair.
Oh, are you Councillor Chair? I forgot about that.
Madam Mayor, I'm quite happy to second Councillor Geddes' proposal.
Thank you.
So, just so I'm clear, this is a request to the Chairman of the Hetton Town Trust to attend a future meeting of Hetton Town Council with a view to
explaining where, you know, how these decisions have been made when it's supposed to be a committee decision, and obviously if the committees haven't met since March, who's making the decisions? I mean, they've got rules to work by, and it seems to me that they are on the road out the window.
Okay, we've had a proposal in the second there. Is that something you wish me to go ahead with?
We've got the football on.
For Chelsea as well. If you haven't seen the goals, you just join us.
Somebody's got the football on by the sound of it.
My friend Kevin Bourne.
Oh.
two more flags, Kevin, for Easington Lane.
Sorry, is that
Sorry,
a decision? Is there any dissent to that request to the Hetton Town Trust?
Councillor Watterson wants to say something.
No dissent here. I just wanted to ask when's the next AGM? Do we know when the AGM is for the
They've asked for it to be deferred until next year. It was supposed to, it's usually September. It's
But
usually
even
September,
so,
but then
the
it's...
AGM, I don't think the public are even allowed, are they?
Sorry. So the AGM was supposed to be the AGM was supposed to be September of this year.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
So
They
when
said
they
it's
put it off?
September.
When are
They put it off to, I think, the beginning of next year. But I mean, the waiting of COVID, or so they're saying.
You're supposed to have 3 months before you have an AGM. You know, they can have an AGM by Zoom or whatever. September, October, November, December.
We've asked for meetings by Zoom for ordinary meetings.
That's your 3 months when they support. That's your leeway to have your AGM, and they can have it by Zoom. But then what they want to put it off even longer. And there's been no meeting since March.
No.
Oh dear me! I think if there had been another charity, there'd have been questions being asked right, left, and centre. Sorry.
Councillor Elvin?
Yes, I think somebody said that Councillor Turner was the vice chairman. If that's the case, would she have any comment? Would you be able to throw any light on the subject?
Well, I think the reason why they're deferring it is because the public are invited and not everyone has the facility to go onto Zoom. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're deferring it. But I don't represent any council on Hetton Town, on the trust I'm on for the churches.
Well, it doesn't matter. You're the vice chairman.
Yes, I am. I've been on for years. I do the minutes for them as well.
And could you throw any light on why a meeting has not been convened at the request of 2 other trustees?
Well, I just believe it's because I don't really know, but there could be members on there on the trust who don't have facilities to go onto Zoom. Not everyone.
May I say that every trustee has an email address, which suggests they have access to the internet. And if you've got access to the internet, you've got access to Zoom.
How many members of the public generally turn up to the AGMs for the Hetton Trust?
We haven't had very well.
It's usually about 2 or 3 at the most,
2 or 3,
Councillor
yes.
Watterson.
And it's usually the same 2 or 3 every year that come along.
Yeah, I've turned up when I haven't been on the trust, and it's only been me on another 1 or 2.
There's usually the same ones turn up each time.
Right.
Madam Mayor, I think maybe the next AGM, if one is ever held, there may be an awful lot more people wish to attend.
I think so, yes. I think so.
So just have some clarity. We had a proposal and a second there. Is it unanimous or is there any dissent?
No dissent by the looks of things, no.
Right, okay. I'll proceed along those lines. Thank you. Item 16, planning matters.
Can I speak? I have my hand up for ages, please.
Stick it further up then, please, because I didn't see you, sorry. Right, sorry.
I was just wondering, is Hetton Town Trust funded by Sunderland City Council?
No, it's a charity.
It's a charity.
Yeah, where's it get its money from?
It's money from when they were doing from the bar, the cafe, the meeting rooms.
Oh, they must be losing money, have they?
And the football, Michael.
Football, yes, sorry.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, I was just curious, that's all. Thank you.
Right, sorry, Town Clerk.
Right, item 16, we've got 2 aspects to the planning matters. The first one relates to a submission by the agent acting on behalf of Gen 2 around Cragdale Gardens. Again, all members have had a copy of this. This is a 6-page document. It's quite fairly hefty. I don't know what councillors' wishes are on this document.
Hello. I would like to speak on this, if you don't mind.
Councillor Hopper?
I've got, for every point that's on here, and so all the discussions that we've had as the Hetton Town Council, they've sort of pretty much just sideswiped us with a couple of comments. Now, every comment they've got on there about the Gen 2 upkeep in the land and all the various other things, every comment that they've got, we have a comment that knocks their comment out. And the reason being is, we're local people. So when they're writing a document with a professional architect or a professional ex-planner or whatever, however, Pegasus is a company that they've employed to try and get the planning permission through. So I would like for council to compile and to send a document to the planning application committee and just say that, well, actually there should be no weight lent to this document because it's a nice work of fiction. That's all it is. Nobody's ever visited the area. The traffic survey was done historically. The police have said that if that housing estate is built, we'll go into a high risk bracket for crime. We don't need the houses. We've proved we've got plenty of empty houses. And they say Gen 2 is upkeeping the land. I've got photographs over the past 3 years. They're not upkeeping the land at all. So yeah, I don't know exactly how we would proceed with that, but we need to, as I say, Rob, Councillor Rome, carry on.
I would like to propose that we take this matter to, I had a word with the town clerk, to a planning meeting where this a response can be properly discussed and got together. We can have members of the public involved because it's going to take a long time to get the response document ready. And I think the town clerk says we have got a window on January the 4th if we get our fingers out.
Excellent.
Yep.
I'll second that.
You can speak, Mr. Keady.
Thank you. You're too kind. You're too kind. Yeah, just in terms of having a planning committee meeting, there is a window to get a planning committee meeting in early January, but I will need to speak to city council officers tomorrow, because the discussion I previously had with them when the document from Gen 2 came in was it would be discussed at this evening's meeting. And I suspect that the City Council are now organising their timescales around some feedback from the Town Council from tonight. So I will have to have that discussion with them, because I did pick up from the officer I was dealing with that we're wanting to get this to committee, I think in January. So if we have a planning committee, say the first week in January, and I'll have to check on bank holidays and things to make sure we can get the requisite 3 clear days. It then can't be ratified until full council meets on the 18th of January.
Oh, sure.
Can I, Madam Mayor?
January. So it's just to make members aware of the some of the timescales on this.
Councillor Rome?
Yeah, can I just say that it's not even, is it 6 months or 7 months since local residents up there were being told, oh, this is only a proposal, we're going to do this. We're not, and all of a sudden it's one mad rush to get it through. The people in that area have been hoodwinked. This is being raced through, and we've got to be firm with Sumner City Council. We are a statutory consultee, and we cannot have them rushing us, and we need to sit down and have a proper meeting about it. So we've got to stand firm. Thank you.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Councillor Geddes, yeah, thank you.
Totally agree.
Yes, Councillor Elvin?
Madam Mayor, but could I suggest that if the town clerk feels that there's going to be no flexibility from Southern City Council, that we actually bypass the the proposal for a planning subcommittee meeting, and we call an extra town council meeting, maybe a full council meeting, on the lines that Councillor Rome has suggested. That way it can be ratified there and then, whatever we decide to put through. I don't know whether that's feasible or not.
Yeah.
I think considering, Councillor Elvin, I think considering the importance of this, I'm sure it's not we're bound to have a meeting, you know, call a meeting, you know, so yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I'll speak to the officer tomorrow, and I'll advise Councillor Rome in her capacity as Chair of Planning accordingly. But that's certainly an option. If the timescales don't extend until the full council, we'll have a one-off extraordinary meeting specifically to discuss the Gen 2 statement.
Lovely.
Yeah, the second part of this.
Will this include, are you... plan to include the public in any of this? Sorry, are you planning to include the public in any of this?
In the planning meeting, yes.
Yeah, you are. It will be open to the public.
Yeah, all town
If it
council
goes
meetings,
ahead.
all town council meetings are meetings in public, except under very limited circumstances where you get an exemption, but this would not be one of those circumstances.
Okay. Excuse me, excuse me, Phaeton, but I'm just raising my sugar level, so that's why I'm in a meeting. I'll get wrong after the town clerk, but I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, can I say, in light of the clerk's
Yes, Councillor Alvin, sorry, in light of the clerk's what?
prior to, sorry, Councillor Waterson, in light of the town clerk's comments about the fact that all our meetings are open to the public, and in fact we do take the trouble to let the public participate, might I openly state that it would be nice if Sunderland City Council took a leaf out of our book.
Did you want to come in?
Sorry, can I just clarify that they're talking about the public will be allowed at this extraordinary meeting, or are you talking about the next town council meeting? I missed that.
Extraordinary town council meeting.
At an extraordinary meeting, you'll be. Yes, yeah, exactly. I thought this was going to be a meeting just calling the Sunderland planning. You know, it was going to be a meeting about the planning. I didn't realise you were talking about a town council meeting.
And
so
no planning meeting. A planning meeting first.
So it's going to be a planning meeting.
Madam Mayor, for clarity, can I repeat my proposal? Councillor Rome suggested that we had a planning committee meeting, which the public would be invited to discuss this matter, to answer the Pegasus document. Town clerk then said there may not be sufficient timescale for it to come back to the council to be ratified. So I said, well, why don't we bypass the management the planning committee and just go straight to full council? Well, what was done in the planning subcommittee meeting was done in full council, so that we would be within the time scale. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm totally confused now.
Councillor Rome, Councillor Rome, leave it with me. Leave it with me. I'll sort it out.
Madam Mayor, you would still need to have a plan of that to explain through the process of that document.
That's right. That's
or a full council meeting. You should still.
I'm proposing a planning subcommittee meeting to get the document ready, and then
council will be getting it down there. And at the same time, there isn't anything to stop the chairman going down to the planning committee to put those views forward.
Madam Mayor, that's news to me. I know it used to happen in days gone by, but I thought the procedure and protocol was that if a subcommittee met, whatever it decided had to come to full council for it to be approved before it could go anywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
So now Councillor Heron is saying, oh, that doesn't matter. Just because you're chairman, you can go and do what you want.
No, that isn't what I said. I said if we come to an agreement, whether it goes to full council or the plan committee, there's nothing to stop anybody. Anybody can go down to the plan committee and speak, provided they've got the permission of the chair first.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. We have to get our document together to submit to the council so they can put it in their papers for their planning committee, and then one of us can go and speak. We know that.
Madam Mayor, may I suggest, with a bit of festive humour, it's just another red herring. Oh no, red heron, wasn't it? Sorry, red herring.
It's not a red herring. Any member can go down and oppose that. You've got the document. I mean, Councillor Hopper's dying to get down there and tear them to pieces down at Sunderland.
Nah, there's
Adam,
no worthy opponent.
Through the
But thank
chair,
you anyway.
it's a red herring. I think Councillor Herring, bless his
nothing to do
heart,
with
has
Aaron.
completely
Got
missed
nothing to do with
the
Aaron.
has completely missed the point of Councillor Roham's proposal.
Madam Mayor?
Um, Town clerk?
Leave it with me, will you?
Yeah,
Madam
leave
Mayor?
it with the town clerk. Yeah.
10 here, I'm getting pressure.
Yeah, come
I'm
on.
under pressure
Yeah.
to.
Just before you move on, the point of what I was saying is we need to get that Pegasus document knocked out of the equation because it doesn't really
Yeah, we're
have
going
any...
to discuss that at the meeting, the planning meeting, if we can have it on
Planning
January
meeting.
4th. Getting annoyed now.
Oh.
Including the public.
Yes. Okay. The town
there-
clerk wants just come on. Can we carry on?
Has anybody had a drink tonight?
I think we must have all
No,
had a drink.
don't.
I haven't
One.
was.
Need one.
Red meat you've been eating.
Been eating chocolate, but go on.
Right,
Right.
we're ready to move on to 16B.
Yeah.
Right, you've got 3 planning applications here.
I have no objections to all 3.
Neither box, I've read them.
Yeah.
Being a bit, just going to bring these on screen. Do things proper, yeah. So you've got 3. It was Old Broomhill Post Office.
No objections.
Basement
No
of the
problem.
garage.
No objections.
Greenbrook Drive.
No.
conversion of
No
garage.
objections, no objections.
And then Bradley Terrace.
No
No
objections.
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 Is everyone okay with those?
Fine.
Fine.
Fantastic.
All right. Item 17 now, I've included this on the agenda. I don't know if Councillor Geddes or Councillor Waters are in a position just to give a brief verbal update.
I can't even remember what it was about. It was so dry and it was long-winded. But I'm sure about
It was all about, yes, it was all about the Durham councils. You know, there was very little for Councillor Geddes and myself to take part in. It
But
was really all to do with Durham.
But I will say that CDOT will be sending it out anyway.
So if I remember rightly, it was about that double taxation.
Yes, that was one of the things.
Yes, well, so we couldn't take part in anything really without. Yeah.
Okay, the final item, and I don't even know if it got published on the website. Sorry, the penultimate item. Yeah, it was the general correspondence list which I sent out this afternoon. Actually, I did send it to our IT supplier, but it hasn't appeared on the website. I'll just run through it, if I may. Yeah, not necessarily in the right order, so I don't have a copy of the report right in front of me. But this was a copy of the email we had from East Raton Community Group, a letter from the Easington Lane Community Access Point, and a card from the Apostolic Church just thanking us for the donations. I think they're just for noting. I also sent all members a copy of correspondence received from Hetton Lyons Primary School in connection with Hetton Hall Nursery, and a letter which just arrived this morning from the Sunderland Nursery School Head Teachers grouping, again about Hetton Nursery. I think just for noting, and the final was an email from a member of the public just outlining his views on involvement with councillors. I think they're all just for noting this evening if members are okay with that.
Yep.
Yeah. And then finally, your next meeting is on Monday, the 18th of January, 7:15. Okay.
And I wish everybody a Merry Christmas. And I'm sorry there's no cake this year, but you know.
Jingle bells to all.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Thanks
Madam
to,
Mayor, I'm disappointed you didn't send me a virtual mince pie or all of us a
Oh,
virtual
right.
pie.
I'll do that before Christmas.
Happy Christmas, everybody. Healthy and prosperous New Year.
Thanks to all councillors and to members of the public who've stayed the course.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, very nice of them.
Thank
Yes, very good.
Thanks,
Bye. 3 hours well spent.
Night.